obviously this is the season review of the Blatantly Biased Racing Podcast, and we felt like we needed some people who actually know what they're talking about, because casual is, as you're aware, a moron. So we're joined by Nedzo, and Peter Brook, and casual, and me. So yeah, how is everybody?
I think, well, you didn't do justice to the introduction of the podcast.
I never do.
Why do you do that every time? I think we have to make it clear, the podcast was too pro Lewis Hamilton, so we needed a few people who hated him.
Of course. Yeah.
That's why we brought Peter and Ned.
Yep.
I'm
wearing heel figure for Lewis Hamilton.
Exactly. So before we begin, first, Peter, welcome back. Just a basic introduction from your side.
Yeah, so again, I'm back, and if you like history videos and excessively long rankings and all of that stuff, then you can check out my channel.
The links will be in the description below.
Yeah. Owen?
Yeah, I'm Nedzo, and I do more F1 stuff. Similar to what Peter does, history kind of stuff, usually very niche topics, but I like to talk about modern stuff, and I like to rank drivers as well. I like to specify rank, not the other word that sounds like that. But yeah.
Good. Jesus, was tight.
Yeah.
It'll fit right in.
Yeah.
I can swear you called him Oven just then as well.
You did, yeah.
Yeah.
I call it, oh god.
Yeah.
Pardon me.
This is completely fine. I've had people call me worse.
He switched to German because of my Max Mosley orgy joke before we started recording.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
We can say that, right?
Yeah,
Anyways,
it's fine.
let's begin. Let's talk Formula 1, by the way.
Yeah, I was about to say, when we were talking about supporting Lewis Hamilton, I was about to say you were supporting him because you got Tommy Hilfiger. I'm supporting him because I got black.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Anyway.
That bombshell. Thanks for watching. Anyways, let's talk Formula 1. 2024 F1 season. Well, first of all, I think we should get this out. The 2024 Formula 1 season preview was actually done by Peter, me, and Jason. It was done on my channel. I still remember
wrong.
Peter calling Daniel a cockroach.
Yep.
That was
that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
That's how years work, Peter. So it was a long time ago. So yeah, I thought it was nice, just bring the band together for the review. Again, too much foreplay. Let's get to the main bit. First of all,
too much foreplay. I've never heard that in
Yeah.
my entire life, and I've been married for 6 years. Go on. Sorry.
What? Okay, anyways.
Doesn't matter. Continue.
Yeah. My head will implode today. I'm pretty sure about that. This and people still continuing to use race-based data. I think two things that piss me off the most these days. Anyways, first of all, 2024 Formula 1 season. Let's start with you, Peter. What's your first reaction when you look back at the kind of season that we had?
One of the better ones, very 1995 adjacent. That's a good way of comparing it. We've been saying that since quite early on in the season, that in this case, Max is Michael and Lando is Damon. It's hard to say if it's more that Lando was really bad or that Max was just really good in this, because first 7 or 8 races, Max had the fastest car, built out a huge lead, and then just sustained that lead basically at the same gap for the whole season, even though the car was at times fourth fastest, although most of the time it was second fastest. And Lando and McLaren just didn't really get it together, and beyond some crappy race starts, there weren't many significant errors on his part. It was just that it just didn't work. And they had Ferrari being competitive at points, and then even Mercedes at points, and they all just take points off each other. It's that kind of, it is very similar to 1995.
Yeah, Ned?
Interesting.
Yeah, I'd agree with most of those points. I do agree that Lando's basically just fumbled this entire chance at a championship. But there's also the fact that there were also races. It wasn't just Ferrari. Not Ferrari. I was just about to make that point. It's not just Red Bull and McLaren. There's Ferrari and Mercedes in there who have at points been the fastest car. They come out of the hidey hole of wherever they're coming from, and they just come out and they're like at Monaco, it was Ferrari. At Silverstone, it was arguably Mercedes. At Vegas, it was arguably Mercedes. But like you had at points 4 teams that were the quickest. It's similar to 2010 in that regard. Obviously, not in terms of the lineage of the championship itself, but there's elements you can take from all of them. There's a pinch of 1995, a zest of 2010, and a tablespoon of 2024 to make it its own season.
That is a delicious cake.
Yeah. Jason, what's your take?
Honestly, this has been one of the best seasons in years. Like I kept saying, this is my favorite season probably since 2012, and I know that sounds ridiculous, but like 2021 was obviously an all-time great season in the history of the sport for various reasons. But I really love when we have
Michael Massey.
You know, I'm his biggest fanboy. Like 2021 was great, but it was also just stressful. And at the same time, it was just 2 drivers really against each other. And this season, I know we didn't really get a full-on title fight in many ways, but it became a season of just every weekend not knowing who was going to win. And we haven't had that in a long time. The last time I remember realistically is 2012. I know it became kind of 2 protagonists, but I guess this is similar in that way, just not as close because Lando's not Alonso and McLaren's not Ferrari. They did do a great impression of being Ferrari this year by being utterly shit. But yeah, it was just a brilliant season. And I think one of the highlights, which we'll get to a bit later when we talk about something that pissed us off, Verstappen fans kind of got to their villain arc, you know, because over the last few years, I love the underdog, so I never really support the champion apart from Vettel back in the day. But yeah, Verstappen fans had massive support from me 2021, 2022, even 2023. And this year they've become the villain. They have become Team LH. And it's been incredible to watch. So yeah, it's been all round great season. Yeah.
So yeah, I think in my view, for me, it's just the surprise because I was very depressed. I still remember the preview that we did. I was very, very depressed that the kind of season that we're going to have it was probably going to be something similar to what we had in 2023. The first couple of races, look, the off-track nonsense was fun, a lot of fun. I mean, Lewis signing with Ferrari, that was a big thing. Then the whole Christian Horner nonsense. we even forgot what the hell happened there.
He got the finger out.
Yeah, finally. So once all those things happened, you see the season unraveling. Again, Max being brilliant. I won't say this season was as good as 2021 because I think the overall quality and the edge of the seat stuff that we had in 2021, we didn't really have it here. The rivalry couldn't really develop, even though there were points where it kind of exploded. So maybe not as good as that, but honestly a pleasant surprise. I didn't really expect the season to be... I didn't really expect it. I was prepared that this is the season where we start talking about the fact that these rules, these regulations suck. And we're probably going to have a larger debate on that front. Yeah, it just flipped on its head, honestly. Thank you, Christian Horner, by the way, for screwing everything up. Because if he hadn't, maybe we might not even be here.
In fairness, that was mostly Jos Verstappen's fault, in my opinion, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah, that's for off-the-record stuff. Anyways, so yeah, getting that out of the way, I think let's start with the first key topic that I actually wanted to talk about. Top 5 drivers for the 2024 F1 season. I think this was actually going to work because the thing is, I've seen a few lists, and I mean from the race, from I think F1.com, which is probably fucking shambolic. They have Lando at first. Just spoil it.
The race put Lando first?
F1.com.
Oh. What? Yeah.
What, the official F1 webs? Oh, God.
Exactly.
I mean, look, you know how much I love the underdog. Like, you know how much I love the underdog. But I also have this thing in my head, logic, I think it's called, which just, it doesn't make sense.
To be fair, nowadays you have to be inclusive, so you have to be inclusive to people who also have Down syndrome.
Right. Makes
Yes,
sense.
that's what it was. Yeah.
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 This
Might
this
be that.
podcast has been cancelled twice in 9 minutes.
It's all right. I'm disabled. I can say whatever I want.
I mean, maybe F1.com because it's. I mean, I imagine their social media is run by teenage girls. They were ranking the drivers on hotness, and that's how Lando got number one.
Yeah, but
Whoa.
where's
If it-
okay.
Where's
wait,
Franco
oh,
Colapinto?
He might be
Oh yeah,
there in top 10,
there
by
aren't
the way.
enough MILFs voting in that poll. I think for him.
That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Fantastic.
I run the F1 MILFs club. So
Excuse me.
what?
Anyways,
Top
so,
four.
yeah, getting back to the topic. So there have been quite a few lists, and it actually has caused a lot of outrage. My list, by the way, even I shared mine from what we did with Sportskida. So mine was more of just taking the average of driver ratings after every race and just collating the whole thing and then ranking them accordingly. But what's your top 5? I mean, I'll come to mine in the end. Let's start with you, Peter. Your top 5 drivers in 2024.
Trying to make it in my head as I go. Now I'm trying to remember who the drivers are. Okay, Max, Gasly, Leclerc.
Okay.
I guess Sainz.
Gasly, Leclerc, Sainz. Okay.
Oh, I don't want
That's
to be
so weird.
boring and just say like Piastri because
You
it
added
wasn't.
Gasly already.
Yeah, it's not
well,
boring.
that's
Boring
a
is
different
gone.
one. at
Boring is
least.
out of the window already.
Ocon wasn't quite there. I feel like I always forget midfielders. Tsunoda wasn't there. Lawson wasn't there. Maybe just Piastri, even though he was kind of mid for a lot of it. But yeah,
Yeah.
there were a lot of really bad drivers this year, actually.
I mean, that's why we
Oh,
had 24 of
George.
them.
George is the other one, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah, George was supreme.
Yeah. I'm going to take this hat off. It's too
Ned?
warm. I'll just.
Yeah. I'd put Verstappen in my little ranking that I did for my video I did on this exact topic. I'd put Verstappen first.
Yeah.
I think I said my tier list was A to F, but I said if there was an S tier, he'd be the only person in it. Then Leclerc second, George third, Sainz fourth, and I have to disagree with Peter on this. I put Tsunoda fifth.
Okay.
Yeah, finally we have someone who supports Tsunoda. I mean,
I don't support him. I just think that he's done a lot better job than people think this season.
yeah.
Yeah, but Nedzo's channel is sponsored by Honda, as far as I'm aware. So
Yeah.
Is it?
Do you also have a Honda dealership or something?
Oh yeah, I do have a Honda dealership, and I am a 1980s Formula One driver who's actually quite underrated in my own right. Yeah.
interesting.
Oh, God.
Welcome, Derek
Yeah.
Warwick.
Yes.
Jason?
I'm trying to do them in my head while other people are talking as well. Look,
Bit of a
obviously Max
procrastination.
Verstappen has to be number one.
Basically, none of you actually went through the whole thing I gave.
I did. I
I've
did
got
look
it
at the
here.
first
I'm
couple
just
of
trying
points, then could be fucked.
Right. Yeah, Wikipedia to the rescue, so I can remember who the drivers are and
Casual.
how the races went.
We have done this podcast for coming up on a year now. It'll be a year in a couple of months. You have sent me this list every single morning before starting the podcast. I have never once read it before logging into this.
Yeah.
I always
never-
reply. I say
never-
thanks for that, and then I just forget about it until we start recording. So
Yeah, I never prep for our podcast. I log in and go to Con, right, so what are we talking about today? And that's my prep. Yeah.
Yeah.
so my list would be Max
Maybe
Verstappen first.
That's how the curry is made, apparently.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
What an
Go for
Indian
it.
thing to say. So my list would be Max Verstappen first. I think everyone's going to put Max first, right? It was another reason why I keep saying he's probably the best driver since Schumacher, which is just that, obviously we could talk about some of the small weaknesses he has, but otherwise he's been just spectacular.
father?
Not in this podcast. We don't have enough time. I think I would put Leclerc second just because I think Leclerc had an absolutely epic season. I'm going to put Lando third. I know that's probably going to annoy some people, but honestly, look, as much as Lando did make a few mistakes this year, I think the majority of the mistakes were on McLaren, to be fair. And also, unlike Leclerc and unlike Verstappen, he hasn't been in race-winning machinery basically ever in his career yet. So, Leclerc has been able to build some of that. Verstappen was able to build some of that kind of knowledge of leading at the front. So I think the fact that he learned over the course of this challenge in front of him is impressive. And his out-and-out pace has been very, very good. His qualifying compared to Piastri, 20-4, I think it is absolutely insane. So I'm going to put him there. Mine's going to be quite boring, I think, because most of them are probably front running. Yeah. In P4, I'm going to put George Russell. I think he has been massively underrated, and he's done an incredible season.
Have you actually opened my ranking, and are you just reading through that?
No. And P5, I'm going to just do an outside one of, honestly, I was very, very, very impressed by Franco Colapinto. Because I think jumping in and the performances he gave and the way he bounced back from issues, considering who he was up against, where he was at, I think really, really impressive. And I really hope he's back on the grid again, which he probably won't be because F1 just remembers the last race and they remember a crash. So, yeah.
Basically, that was your South American quota, right? After Sergio Perez.
I have to, yeah. If I don't say Sergio Perez, I can't put in the top 5 because he would not allow me because he didn't do one decent drive in the entire fucking season. So I've gone, yeah. Yeah, but he crashed.
South American we are using because according to Marco,
the one race he was doing well, he crashed at the end.
Yeah.
And still got beaten by Max. So,
yeah. So, no.
That was nice.
Yeah. Well, I'm here in Mexico, South America, as you're aware. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, Marco says so, right? He's mostly right on these things. So yeah, my list is actually a lot similar to what Jason had. Actually, all of it seems the same. I had Max on top. Then I had Charles. Then it was Lando. Then it was George, and finally I had Carlos Sainz. So that was my top 5.
Yeah.
Now again, this is entirely based on. It's just me averaging out the driver ratings I used to give for my publication.
So you use science.
Yeah, I use.
So basically, what you're saying is, you used science and logic over the course of an entire season to tell me what I could just come up with off the top of my head.
No, you didn't. You basically read my list.
No, I didn't. I didn't read your list. This is my point. You are absolutely useless.
Yeah. My point being, okay, I think the bigger, you can say the bone of contention is going to be on Lando, right? I think while Jason and I think Lando is supposed to be there, Ned, go for it.
I think you put me
for the audio listeners, Ned is shaking his head like he really wanted to speak something. So yeah, go for it.
So let me just do some quick maths because some people putting him in his top 5. He is in my list: 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th.
Yeah.
So where's Piastri? 18th.
Yes.
18th. Oh,
yes.
Jesus.
And where's Lewis Hamilton on this
my
list?
entire list from worst to best, so we can clarify. So the only driver I had in F tier was Sargent. Fair. E tier was Doohan, Perez, and Joe.
Fair.
D tier was Ricciardo, Stroll, Piastri, and Magnussen.
Okay.
Then C tier is Norris. This is in reverse order, so like the worst to first. Then it's Norris, Albon, Colapinto, Lawson, Alonso, Bottas, Ocon, Hamilton, all in C tier. Then B tier is Gasly, Hulkenberg, Bearman, Tsunoda, then Sainz. Then A tier is Russell, Leclerc, and Verstappen.
Wow. Okay.
Why? Explain yourself.
So the reason why
I mean, you shared the list with me, right? Before we were chatting earlier. So I have gone through it, but
let's not explain the whole list. But Norris, what was your reason?
Basically, I think that McLaren is similar to the 1994 and 1995 Williams, where it was the fastest car for the majority of the season by not a country mile, but by at least 3 or 4 tenths. And Norris won 3 races. Or 4 races, actually, in the end, because I said it in my ranking video. I forgot that he won Abu Dhabi and people fucking ribbed me in the comments. But he won 4 races. Like, as bad as, or not as bad as, but as overstated Lewis Hamilton's title wins were, and all of his title wins, and all of other drivers' title wins were, I expect a driver, if they're in the best car, to win at least 2/3 of the races where they have a fastest car. Lando didn't even do 1/3 of that. It's the most tragic title battle. It wasn't even a battle. He was never within 50 points of the leading driver. It's about as much of a battle as David Coulthard in 1995. Let's say I would focusing back on that season so much. I don't see how people can rate Lando after this. Oh, he's not been in a title winning car before. So no other drivers have had that problem. Just because he's a crybaby and has mental issues doesn't mean that everyone else has. And let me continue. I'm on a roll here. The only drivers who have ever had a championship challenge for the first time in their career, this late in their career, was Nigel Mansell, because he spent 1986 and 1997 blowing up all the time, so he didn't actually know how to. He had spent years at Lotus being shagged by Peter Waugh because he didn't like him for some reason.
The rest of his time in the pub. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other one was Nico Rosberg, who had a very weird career path because he was before he got in that Mercedes, there was no chance of him winning a championship, obviously, but he was never really destined to become a champion. He was destined to become maybe a second incarnation of Hulkenberg. Not that that's a bad thing, but he was destined to be a kind of an upper midfield driver that never really broke into a top car. Lando isn't that. Lando has been in midfield cars. He's had really good seasons. He's had seasons where you think, you know what, this guy could grow to be a potential champion. And as soon as he gets into a championship-winning car, he proves that that's not the case. Like I want Lando as a Brit. I want to have a British driver to cheer on, even though I am a neutral. I want to have a British driver to cheer on. But Lando has proved that he's not that guy. At least not this season. He might in 2025. He might come back. He might get some psychiatrist on board. He might sort out all his inner demons. He might break down his sex dungeon. But this season was not it.
Ooh, well, that was damning.
Yeah. How do you back that up? Okay, so I'll give it a go. Agreed. All these things. Okay.
Oh God.
Okay, no, not all of these.
Even the sex dungeon?
I mean, good points made. So, yeah,
Good points,
okay.
well made. Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't the case that he had the fastest car by 2 to 3 or 4 tenths. That wasn't the case. It was maybe a couple of tenths.
Which is
biggest
2
weakness
tenths.
that Lando had, I think even Peter touched on, it was the fact that he had poor starts. He lost around 65 points to those starts. And the final gap between him and Max was 63 points. So that was one. If only he just worked on that bit, he would have actually secured the title. That didn't happen. Now, the reason why I still put him in this position is, again, this is probably me being slightly hyperbolic, but you've ranked him at 14th, right? 14th or something like that.
16th, I think it was.
Okay. 16th. I don't think there are many drivers who... I think Max, Leclerc, maybe George and Alonso. These are the 4 drivers that I think would have won the title in that McLaren. I don't think there's any other driver, and I include Lewis and probably Oscar.
And Lewis this year definitely wouldn't.
Yeah. So I don't think the other 10 drivers, I don't think they win the title in this particular car. The reason is they're not as good as Lando. I think one of the things that actually get hidden is the mistakes that he made. Again, he's not the polished product. I don't think we have to talk about that thing a lot. But there are still a lot of things that work for him. He's bloody good when it comes to being fast, having that race management with him, and that has helped him be there and thereabouts. Even the races where he was probably not getting the best possible result, he was very close to it. Like he was getting 90% of it. The biggest problem for him is he's going up against Max Verstappen and a team like Red Bull, which is entirely a well-oiled machine where every race, everything they'll maximize. And when you have such an experienced outfit that is basically going to make sure that all chips on Max. That's how that team works. It becomes very hard to actually compete with it. And again, the McLaren factor is not talked about often. As soon as Lando lost the title, what was the first thing that Stella said? We were not even fighting for the Drivers' Championship.
Oh, Jesus.
When you have that kind of culture, it makes it hard for the driver to actually shine. I think that's where Lando I think that's where he probably... I'll put it this way. I don't think Lando at this stage has the killer instinct to be a world champion, because an Alonso would not have taken that shit. The kind of things that he actually took. Hungary being the first of them. Alonso was not giving that position away. The point is, he's not that, but he's still bloody good. And he might next year, if he has this car, the one he had in Abu Dhabi, I don't think it would be a surprise if he ends up winning the title. I honestly don't. Reason being, he had again, we talked about it earlier in this pod only. The last 4 races, there's one thing that has stood out, which has not stood out throughout the entire season. Lando is now finally able to get his starts in order. Pole position conversion in sprint in Abu Dhabi. So he's working on those mistakes and getting it better. Again, 65 points he lost. He's worked on it. So yeah, maybe there's better things to come. Go for it.
Oh, Peter's about to bash on Norris now.
An interesting point of note on that is because, again, this is a bit of a plug of my last video of when you run the races from back to front, so we start in Abu Dhabi, is that if the season ended in Spain, Lando and Max would have been tied on points, but Lando would have won on countback because he would have had 3 wins to Max's 2 or 4 to 3 or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that again shows how the gap didn't really change at all, because I don't think there were any races where he ate more than 7 or 8 points into Max's lead. Because
there was one where he got 12, and I think that was Australia, right? I think that was the only one.
Obviously from when, because of retirement.
You mean
that was from the Miami onwards, basically.
Right. Sorry,
because even in Italy, when Max, that was when they were at their worst in terms of pace, Red Bull, and Max was 6th, Lando was still only 3rd rather than winning it, because he got beaten off at the start by Piastri, and then for once Ferrari actually did a strategy that worked and got the win. So it was just little things like that, and I could see the British media just like forming a prayer circle trying to manifest this championship for him, and it's like, it's obviously not happening when everyone's patting themselves on the back when he shaves 1 point off Max's lead by winning a sprint race or something. Like, it's not, or you're waiting for an implosion from Max. It's like, okay, this is Red Bull, so there could well be a mechanical failure, but Max is not just going to crash out of a race from the lead. Lando is going to do that, and that's why, like, São Paulo was hilarious, because it everything, like the weather, race control, the stewards were all conspiring against Max, and then he just went and annihilated everyone in the race, and it was Lando that was messing up and going off track and doing all of that. Like, that was the real... That was when Max put his foot down. I was like, no, this championship is ending now, and it almost ended that day if Lando had finished like 1 place lower.
Agreed.
I think, look, the thing for me is, I think I've a bit of more sympathy for Norris maybe than some other people, just for a few factors, which is, it to me, it's like one of those situations where, as much as Norris wasn't good enough to win the title this year, and I think that's just a fair statement, he just wasn't good enough to win the title this year, there was also a variety of factors working against him. One of which, like I said, is the thing of, this was the first year where he won a race as well. So this is the first time he's ever been in this situation. I know there is, and I think Owen makes a good point, that, like, a proper ready world champion would just be ready for that situation anyway. Max Verstappen would have been, but I do think it does need to be put into context. The other thing is, when we look at the race starts, even there were a few of those race starts where, if you look at it, even Piastri got bogged down at the race start, and Piastri has been very good at race starts. So parts of that are just down to the fact that the clutch settings and the gearbox settings that McLaren had put into place weren't good enough, because both drivers got caught out by it. So there's some leeway given there. This is me, by the way, just trying to get all of the Lando fangirls on board. And then the other thing is, he was very much working against his own team. And we've seen what that's done mentally to even drivers like Leclerc, for example. Was it Leclerc in Las Vegas going absolutely bonkers on the radio against Sainz? But it's just like, McLaren, there was a 52 point deficit, was there, in Miami, was it, or was it in Spain that there was that 52 point deficit? I think it was in Miami. That's where it was.
It was in Miami.
Right. So you're talking about trying to beat what is a gap that has never been beaten in a situation where your team is just winning for the first time, so they're not used to winning. McLaren isn't the McLaren of old, so McLaren's not able to win. So you're fighting against a team that not only doesn't know how to win, continues to make mistakes, gets mappings wrong, and then also just isn't interested in fighting for the Drivers' Championship at all. We saw that in Hungary. We saw that in Monza. They did not care about the driver's title. So look, I think as much as Lando made mistakes, he also beat his teammate 20-4 in qualifying. I think it was 16-8 8th in the races. So comprehensively beat a very, very fast teammate, took home some wins, and if it wasn't for him, they weren't winning the constructors in the last race either, thanks to partly to Max, who clearly didn't want them to win. So look, I think as much as Lando needs to go away and reflect, what I was impressed by is he did improve throughout the season. Even from Austin to Mexico, he clearly learned from allowing Max to kind of take advantage of the rules and beat him. And then in Mexico came back and really pushed against Max there. Unfortunately, Max just doesn't give a shit and ran him off the road completely then. But he did learn, and he did kind of take those lessons on. And I think people will probably be surprised by how good Lando is next year. The last thing I'll say is it's like the old saying of your father, which is when you're 5, your father knows everything. When you're 15, your father knows nothing. When you're 25, father's learned a lot in the last 10 years. I think we'll probably see that from Lando next year, unless McLaren continue to be McLaren.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Ned?
Yeah, I was going to say, to your points on McLaren were clearly not fighting for a driver's title. Maybe if Lando actually, beat his teammate on merit, then maybe he wouldn't have to have the team give the points to him. But
he did beat his teammate on merit over the course of the whole season. No, but I mean over the course of the whole season.
24-17-7. I mean, how much more?
Yeah.
That's basically, that's the second best as teammate head-to-head other than Max and Sergio Perez.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair enough. But I do think that there should be a clear gap where he should have been.
Sure, but I mean, in that situation then, like, the point about Monza that I would have, I get what you're saying, he should have just beaten it, but at the same time, he was obviously taken by surprise in Monza because he thought the team would have his back after Hungary, for example, right? Like, in Hungary, he gave up the position when, in reality, he shouldn't have. Like, Piastri threw away that race win by going off the track in Sector 2. So,
in the second stint.
In the second stint.
Strategy thing because
the strategy allowed him to get by, but the only reason the undercut worked is because Piastri had a 6 or 7 second gap and he threw away like half of it by running off track. So everyone talks about, well, Norris lost it at the start, but in reality, Piastri also lost it at the second stint by going off, or, in going off track there. So I don't know. Like, I just think the point about McLaren I was making is more that when you have a sniff at a title fight like that, you should back that driver 100%, especially when that driver is comprehensively beating the other driver. Like, it's not even close. And Monza was just a perfect example of, like, why did they not immediately invert that?
I'll tell you what would be hilarious now, because you said about backing a driver if they are clearly in the fastest car. 2008 with BMW Sauber. If McLaren next year have a 4th or 5th quickest car, and they're like, "Oh, we weren't fighting for it. We weren't fighting for it last year. We're fighting for it this year," and it turned out to have an awful car. That'll be the funniest thing in human history.
Yeah, because BMW absolutely should have backed.
The thing is, at least for McLaren, they at least won something.
BMW didn't win anything.
BMW was a complete joke on that case. And I'm just sum it all up. I think first of all, what we need to actually ask us is, how good is Oscar Piastri? I think he's fucking good. I think and I won't be surprised. Again, this season I had picked Oscar to beat Lando. That was my prediction. Yeah.
I think everybody did.
No, I think Peter picked Lando to beat Oscar. I remember, if I'm not wrong.
I think I said that, but I think I said that Oscar would win a race before Lando.
Did that happen? No, that
I think I kind of joked that might happen because Lando can't win races, but it obviously didn't go that way. But then only because in Miami he had it spoon-fed, or force-fed to him against his will, basically.
Yeah, so that happened. Again, coming back to it, I think Oscar is also brilliant. And again, I think next season for McLaren, if they want to be ruthless enough, they have to be, and I don't think they're going to fall off or any such thing. The car will be strong enough because the regulations are stable. It's not like 2008 to 2009 where there's a drastic jump. So that won't be the problem. But McLaren has to be very careful. They can't do the same nonsense that they did this season, and you cannot have a situation where both drivers are taking points off each other, because then that's nonsensical. After, I think, maybe by the summer break, whoever is ahead and clearly better,
maybe
back him.
Honestly, maybe sooner, because I think we will have a situation where, like, Red Bull have some fundamental balance issues to fix, but we could have a situation where Red Bull are back up there constantly.
Yeah.
And then you have Ferrari there. Mercedes aren't 100 miles off, so I mean they could be close. Like they may have to make this decision after 6 races, and it may be an uncomfortable one as well, because like if Oscar gets a really good start to the season, they may have to say to Lando, sorry, like Oscar's the better driver.
Exactly.
So I think they're going to have to make it really, really quick. So it's going to be interesting to see how both drivers cope, because Oscar, as you said, is a very, very good driver. I think how this season has panned out is Lando is clearly the quicker driver, just in terms of out and out pace, but Oscar definitely has a better mentality just a better mentality of how to go about racing for a championship. So the question is going to be, can Oscar be as fast as Lando? Because if he can, then Lando's really in trouble.
He's the better product in terms of that. Because, getting the intangibles is probably a bit tougher.
That's where Nedzo and I definitely agree. Like, Oscar, in terms of mentality, Lando is lacking quite a bit.
Yeah.
Just not in pace, unfortunately for Max fans. Sorry.
Yeah. Anyways, enough of Lando and the top 5 debate. Again, one thing that kind of actually rubbed people the wrong way when I put out my list, and it was probably a bit of a, you can say, divergence from almost every other list that I've seen, even yours, Nid. Would you put Lewis Hamilton in the top 10 drivers in 2024?
I don't think I did. I'll just double check.
It was 9th, I think, in your case.
What is that?
Was it 9th?
It was, so 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. Oh, 9th. It was in the top 10. Yeah. Just 9th, scraping in.
Yeah. So I have him at 14th. That's what I had after the entire average. Peter, let's start with you. Would you put Lewis in top 10?
I don't think so. I think he'd be kind of just outside it, probably. Races, it was kind of relatively even between him and George. They would kind of come and go, but he got just obliterated in qualifying. And Lewis, he has the most pole positions in Formula One. He's normally a pretty indomitable qualifier, and he just got annihilated on Saturdays, basically. So that's quite damaging to his score for this season, I think.
Yeah, Ned?
The way I'd put it is, I agree his qualifying performance has been piss poor, arguably the worst 5 drivers of the season in qualifying. But the fact that he's recovered from those races, and I know he's had better reliability records than George has, but the fact he's come back and most of the time been up and there, at least somewhere in the bounds of where he is, whether it's 1 position ahead or behind or 2 positions ahead or behind, he's usually up there. So he does clearly still have the race pace. For the most part, like he's still inconsistent, and he still had both his wins handed to him on a silver platter. But that doesn't mean that he's necessarily. I don't think he's fully gone. I don't think he's fully washed. But I do think that if he truly wants to get this 8th title, and he wants to get it at Ferrari, and he wants to beat Charles Leclerc, he needs to find another level, similar to what he had in 2015, similar to what he had in 2020, where he has another level of performance where you just think, actually, you know what? He might be inconsistent. He might not have the truly great, like truly fantastic moments that all the other champions do. But if he can pull something out over the course of a season, which is something he's struggled to do, especially at the start of seasons, then he might be able to get an 8th championship in the near future.
Yes.
Yeah. He's never getting an 8th. I'll just put that down right now. Look, the thing for me is just, I made a comparison earlier in the season for Lewis Hamilton that really pissed some people off, which was when, I don't know if it was on the podcast or maybe just on Twitter, but basically I said,
what a surprise.
I know, yeah. But like last year when Perez was qualifying really poorly, I think it was last year or 2022, but he was qualifying really poorly. The constant talk was, yeah, but look at his brilliant recovery drives. And everyone was like, yeah, well then qualify better, including me as a Perez fan, just like, well, qualify better then. Like
he kept winning driver of the day last year.
Yeah, because of these recovery drives, and it's like, well, you shouldn't be doing recovery drives. Like qualify better. But this is like all season the same thing, where it's like, oh, look at Hamilton's brilliant recovery drives. If only he qualified better. And even he said, I remember after Las Vegas, I got quite pissed off, and he was like, if I had qualified better, I would have breezed past George. It was like, well, then fucking qualify better. Like shut up about it. So you can't just keep making these excuses, because when people kept making excuses for Perez, other people, including myself, rightly continue to say, well, then he should learn to qualify better. Like, he shouldn't be doing these recovery drives. And Hamilton is the same. And honestly, the thing that has annoyed me the most about Hamilton this season is it's even like the British media are backing this up all the time, which is, well, if he doesn't have a sniff at a win or a qualifying or a win or a podium, he just kind of gives up. And I'm like, well, that's not good enough.
It's a
Like,
him issue.
yeah, like if anyone said that about Lando, for example, the world would be going nuts. They'd be like, well, get him out of there then. He can't just be fighting for a drive when he can win. Yeah, that's a stupid thing to say. So Hamilton this year has been interesting because it's like 2023, I banged on about how brilliantly he was driving. Like, Lewis genuinely in 2023 was brilliant. And this season, he's had some really, really strong race drives. But it's just, George Russell has just been so much better than him all season. And this is a guy who's going to go to Ferrari, get $100 million, replace Carlos Sainz. Like, what happens next year if he goes into that seat and is just comprehensively destroyed by Leclerc? I mean, why keep him around? Especially when his attitude is, well, if I can't fight for podiums and wins, I'm just not going to fight. Like, that's not a Formula One attitude, and especially not the attitude you expect from a 7-time world champion. Like, it's just not. So it's just been a really underwhelming and kind of frustrating season to watch Hamilton, to be honest, because it just hasn't seemed like he's cared. He's thrown a team that gave him 6 championships under the bus repeatedly.
Far too many times.
And
he honestly,
he hasn't given his teammate any credit either.
From him, honestly.
He's in very unfamiliar territory at the moment, because ever since he joined Mercedes or McLaren back in 1998, he's been running at or near the front in everything he raced in. And so he's not really used to having to fight just to get points and not necessarily always being on course to win. And he's also not so used to having a teammate beating him so regularly as this, because Rosberg, it was 3-1 on seasons between them, and Rosberg was often better in qualifying, but races, Hamilton was usually the one on top, and then Bottas, Kovalainen, forget about it. Button, it was kind of touch and go. I mean, Button would be sometimes unbeatable, but then most of the time was just totally dog shit for no reason. And then again, Alonso, it was one season and he just got in Alonso's head and all of that. He hasn't, because again, I've been saying this ever since he entered Formula One, really. He hasn't had to have an entire season in a midfield car that is never going to be expected to get podiums or wins. Whereas Max has had to do that, Vettel's had to do that, Rosberg, everyone else has had to do it, but not Hamilton. There are very few other drivers. The only other ones, really, it's just Fangio and Schumacher, who have, not even Schumacher, have had always competitive cars, because Schumacher started, the Jordan was only for a few races, and then from Benetton onwards, front-running cars, and then the Mercedes were
but Benetton was not front-running when he joined it, right? It was still
he made it front-running, because those things were ancient and very outdated, and everyone else hated driving them, but he just made them work, basically. But he didn't have a whole season of, say, no podiums or anything like that.
I think he went 92 to 2006, 15 years with
a win every season.
And
again, Lewis lost that distinction in 22 of being the only driver to win in every season they competed. There's probably someone that did like one race in the only season they did, but I don't know.
It's look, for me, I'll just keep it based on the performance this season. I think the biggest problem has been for Lewis this season. He started the season and he realized very soon that the car is not going to fight for the title, and the car was tough to drive. So he kind of took the step back. This car needs a lot of work, a lot of hours that need to be put in to actually understand how it's going to work, a lot of tuning and everything that needs to be done. He didn't really do that. And that's where George pulled. You can see, start of the season, George was ahead. And then as soon as the car got better, there were, again, Spa, I think Lewis was phenomenally the better driver. I still think Silverstone, it could have gone either way if George did not have the power unit issue from the very first lap. He apparently had a power unit issue, and then he was managing it. And then, again, if you remember when Lewis jumped him, he didn't really put up much of a fight. George is someone who will put up a fight when it comes to any wheel-to-wheel battle. I think George might have even won in Silverstone. And even in Silverstone, Lando would have won the race if not for McLaren being...
McLaren.
And exactly.
Piastri as well,
They didn't double stack him as well. Ferrari imploded because, of course, I don't think they had the pace anyway. Leclerc was out of it from the beginning, basically.
Ferrari basically put Leclerc out on, I think it was intermediates when it was dry, and then slick
And then
when it was wet.
they put him on intermediates again when everyone else realised they had to go on to intermediates. But by then he'd been losing like 12 seconds a lap or something.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I mean, race engine,
Good luck,
the
Lewis.
strategists, they don't understand wet weather, and it's maybe because we're never allowed to race in wet races anymore, so people have just forgotten how to strategize for them.
And by the way, that's where Lewis is going next. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, next season, it's a lot of things are actually going to come out. But honestly, this season, there has been a lot of things. Again, just like I think Jason pointed it out, what pissed me off the most was the hypocrisy from Sky. Again, this is not new. When Lewis said that I will just call it a day in Qatar, any other driver who does that, you would get him hammered from anyone in the commentary. But here you had basically all of them mollycoddling him for no fucking reason. I mean, I still remember, I think it was 2018 or early 2019, where I think it was Brundle who wrote an article that Vettel is starting to lose his peripheral vision because he was having too many collisions or something. And this was 1 year after a bad season where 2018 was a bad season for him. And here you have a driver that is basically saying that I don't want to race. And they said nothing. They said, we feel bad for Lewis. And what the fuck are we talking about? He's getting paid millions and he's not willing to turn up. And that's something that just rubbed me the wrong way. I don't think I'll put a driver in top 10, even if I don't look at the average or anything, who's not really committed to the team. And that's just the whole thing. He was trying to see out the entire season and had a pretty brilliant... If he had a Bottas next to him, he would have cruised throughout the year. But he had Russell. That's where the problem was for him.
For me, it does. Like, I'm not even pissed off at the British media for doing stuff, or for like not even just British, but any media doing it. That doesn't bother me because this is just part and parcel of the game that everyone's playing. It's when Lewis specifically says it about a team. Like, he says things about a team and about his teammate and stuff, and it's like, look, I know you're leaving, but you wouldn't have any more than probably one title is all you would have right now. If it wasn't for this.
We've discussed
zero. McLaren. No, but he had a title at McLaren. Is my point.
Yeah, only one. Yeah.
I mean, that's my point. He wouldn't have any more than one title if it wasn't for this team, and the lack of just respect when. Like, Toto Wolff and George themselves have been massively respectful of everything that Lewis has done for the team. And it's like, I expect this from fans. I expect this from silly clickbait articles. But when he's coming out and saying stuff, it's like, what are you doing? Like, how can you possibly do this when clearly you are the problem? Your teammate is driving fine. You're the issue. It's just,
the biggest example was Brazil, right? Where he said the car is bad, this, that. And I think he even admitted afterwards that he probably wanted to call it a day then.
Yeah.
And George would have, if it was not for the late safety car or the red flag that happened, George would have won that race. He was leading.
I mean,
at the very least, he was
on the front row as well, wasn't he? And Hamilton was out in Q1.
Yeah.
Or something as well.
Yeah. And
they continue
to show his onboards where he's struggling with the car. You just put both the onboards of George and Lewis at the same time, and both had same struggles, but one was able to make it work. It's it's utter nonsense, honestly.
Isn't the mark of a great driver their adaptability as well, that they can make a bad car work?
Yeah.
And Lewis obviously can't do that in this car, whereas Schumacher was able to do it in the past. Fangio, he won 5 titles with 4 different teams.
Yeah.
As well. It's like, he just doesn't seem to have that adaptability.
I wonder, like, everyone here, because this is the thing. Like, we had this argument on Twitter and in this podcast where people were saying, George is just a good driver, not a great one. And I was like, well, by that logic, then Lewis is completely washed, like absolutely washed. Because either you agree that both are brilliant and George is just performing a little bit better this season, or is better this season, or that George is only good and Hamilton has completely dropped off. I think everyone here would agree, like, George is a brilliant driver and this season has proved it, right?
He's beaten Lewis far more convincingly than any of Lewis's previous teammates, who were all either obviously worse or just kind of there or thereabouts when at their very best against him.
I mean, I'd argue that Jensen, especially in 2011, was better. But George, for me, definite championship potential. I think if you put him, for example, in the McLaren this year or in the Red Bull, I think he would have. I don't think he'd have beat Verstappen, but I think he would have definitely done better than what Norris did.
I'd agree with that. I would agree with that, yeah.
It's his total commitment. He's always on the radio talking strategies and where is everyone and how do we fix this and blah, blah, blah as well.
He's very level-headed. He has a couple of issues that he needs to sort out with his racecraft, obviously, and he's a bit egotistical, but you could say that literally about any driver nowadays.
George is ideal for that. Like, he will be the perfect darling in front of the media, but behind the scenes, he will destroy everyone. As soon as he put the helmet on, he's like...
I mean, he's turned into a giant bellend ever since he joined Mercedes. Like, everyone loved him before then.
Even before that, he had moments where he had outbursts, like Imola 2021 and stuff like that. But yeah, as I said, I think he is definitely, like, losing to George Russell is not... If you were to say, like, to Nicholas Latifi and Sargent, I know they got absolutely battered by him, but like it's not a death sentence in your Formula 1 career to say you got beat by George Russell. It just so happens that the guy he's beating is a 7-time champion who people seem to think is the greatest of all time.
Yeah, and that's my point. If Lewis had just said this season, look, I just haven't been able to get on top of the car, whatever, that's fine. But it was just this constant, like, when he was doing well, it's like, I feel like I've gotten on top of things. And when he's doing poorly, it's like, come on, guys, what's happening with this car? And it's like, your teammate's getting on fine. Like, stop blaming the car. Stop blaming the team.
I mean, even Vegas, right? He made the mistake in the final pole shootout. Both first and the second lap, he made the mistake.
Yeah.
It's not on anyone else. And just get your hand, just raise your hand and say, okay, I messed up.
As you know, that was the turning point for me. That was literally the podcast after Vegas. I had been up until that point like, look, it's clearly frustrating him. It's getting to him. The moment he said, I would have breezed past George, that when I was like, look, just fuck off now. I'm done. Like,
he doesn't seem to like the newer circuits. I find that because like Baku, he's never been brilliant there. He's bloody awful at Jeddah. Like he seems to. It's the old vintage like Silverstone, Hungary, Spain, Spa. He's excellent at those. He doesn't seem to be maybe it's a street circuit thing. I don't know. Because Monaco, he's never been particularly good at Monaco.
He did admit.
The thing is, he doesn't want to. You have to be willing to put in the hard yards, and I don't think after 2021 he's been willing to do that.
Well, in 2021, he said that he hadn't been in a simulator in years until that point. So
and track walks, he didn't even do those either. Like I mean, that's the total opposite to someone like Schumacher. Because I mean, I don't know if they had simulators in Schumacher's day. Michael, he would have done all of that.
They would have done towards the end of the 2000s.
But even so, it sounds like Lewis basically is just coasting on having like amazing machinery. Because again, he's not known for having particularly great technical input or understanding. Again, strategy is quite passive. He usually just lets the team decide it, and he can't really think on the fly in the way that Vettel can and Sainz can and people like that. It is. This is the whole thing about just being
he's skated by on being incredibly talented as well, because he is a quick driver. Like, give him a fast car, he is a very, very good, very, very quick driver.
I think what he realized in 2016 was that him at 80% beats drivers like Rosberg, Bottas every day of the week.
Yeah,
he had not realized it until he lost the championship to Rosberg fairly, and since then he knew. Again, he was pushed in 17 and 18 by Vettel. Ferrari imploded thanks to them, but in 2019 and 2020 he knew that if he lost a race or a couple of them to Bottas, he still had enough in him to actually end up winning the title, and that's how he did.
I'm trying to think of other examples of other like multiple champions who maybe late in their careers were beaten like this by someone less experienced. And
PK to Schumacher.
But that was for 5 races. But I mean, in terms of more sustained, because I like with Michael and Rosberg. Rosberg beat him 3 years in a row, but the first 2 was relatively close. By 2012, he had fallen off once he realised he just didn't have it in him anymore. But by then, he was in his early 40s, and he'd had 3 years outside of the sport.
Yeah,
I mean, Lauda had a bit of a fall off in his final year, but that was a reliability. Prost was basically undefeated by all of his by anyone, because I mean, 1988 was on a technicality with the whole taking points off thing.
You could argue Graham Hill because of his leg break at Watkins Glen in '69. He was basically not the same driver after that.
Fangio, on his own skill, certainly was largely undefeated. I mean, there was reliability.
Even when he retired, he was still, I'd argue, the best driver in F1. Like, he literally got pole in the 1958 Argentine Grand Prix and led the entire way until he got an engine failure or something like that.
Clark again was undefeated. I mean, PK for the most part was undefeated, but then he had some really shitty cars right near the end. But then he was still
PK and Mansell was, I think it tilted towards Mansell, right? In Williams,
I mean,
86
PK
and 87.
86, I can't remember who beat who, but in 87...
86 it was Mansell, 87 it was PK.
Yeah. I mean, it's harder to think back because reliability was such a huge factor, and that's again,
Yeah.
isn't it? Now, reliability is not a factor, and for Lewis, in general, reliability has not been a factor in his career because he's had, well, since joining Mercedes, he's had 7 mechanical retirements from nearly 250 races.
That's
not even one per season. And then he didn't have that many with McLaren. I think he has about 28,
2012, he had quite a few.
Yeah, he did have a lot in 2012, but I think in total, about fewer than 30 races that he's failed to finish, and most of those have been accidents. He's just had abnormally good reliability, whereas Max, up until 2021, had like abysmal reliability from his Red Bull cars.
I will say, I have a spread. I say this all the time when this comes up. I have a spreadsheet that was accurate up until the end of 2022. I need to update it all. Where I have listed the records of every driver who has a podium, a pole position, or a fastest lap. So pretty much about 200 or 300 drivers. So a good decent of them. Of all of them, you get rid of the guys who had like 1 or 2 starts back in the 1950s. Of all of them, Lewis Hamilton has the highest reliability record of anyone.
Yeah.
Of anyone, regard not just the other guys, but there's people like of every single person in F1 history. Obviously part of that is him, but it's also the cars that he's been in.
There have been a couple of moments where he's had reliability at really key moments that he's had a breakdown, but very, very rarely.
Yeah.
Whereas everyone else has had, again, Vettel has had these problems, and Max and people like that. Rosberg had more problems than him when they were teammates of reliability as well.
Yeah,
across the 3 seasons.
I still remember, by the way, 2016, the open letter from Mercedes. I mean, to the fans that there was no sabotage or anything involved when Rosberg was leading the championship. People think that 2024 is the first time that this happened, but apparently it's a regular theme. I mean, I remember Button getting a lot of stick from the fans even back in the Facebook group days and everything. Yeah. Anyways, a lot of Lewis Hamilton bashing, as I warned earlier.
I love there's 2 British people on this podcast, and 2 British drivers have been absolutely scathingly bashed by the British.
We couldn't even find one British driver that likes him. Yeah.
I can't speak for Peter, but I don't really care. I don't really care about just the British drivers. I don't think it's the 1960s anymore. I don't think we need to be all patriotic and support our own.
Yeah,
we can just.
The thing is, I used to have that attitude that I used to really resent the idea of people blindly supporting athletes because they were British, even though at the time I did support Hamilton in 2008 very strongly. But then these days I do swing more towards supporting English and British athletes in competition. But then I haven't supported Lewis since 2008.
Yeah,
and I did like George. I mean, George, I don't mind. It's just, I loved him at Williams. Now he's a bell end.
Yeah,
Lando is just annoying because he acts like a teenage girl all the time, and then I'm kind of ambivalent with Bearman, I suppose.
Him.
Yeah.
At least in terms of wheel-to-wheel action, he can be a menace. I mean, that way at least.
He's entertaining from that perspective. He'll give you a couple of good crashes every now and then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think supporting on that note, I think supporting Brits at like the Olympics and stuff is obviously fine, but in like in organised competitions that are like a lot more seasonal, like for example football and stuff, it's a lot less unless it's supporting your literal like local team, like I do. It's not really necessary because we aren't in the 1960s or the 1990s or older decades. It's a lot more fluent. It's a lot more online. So like, I'd argue that the fan bases of Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen amongst the younger generations in this country are probably, I'd not say about similar, but I'd say it's a lot closer than you'd expect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still have war wounds from the Vettel years of constantly having to defend him against all of my friends and everyone else, and going to Silverstone and being surrounded by McLaren fans as a Vettel fan and having them, booing him and heckling him, and every time he was beating Lewis or whatever. So yeah.
Well, we get accused of British. We get
ahead.
accused of British bias on this podcast quite a lot, which is absolutely hilarious because you have to explain to people, right, one of the hosts is an Indian and the other host is from the Republic of Ireland. Go check the history, you'll find we're not exactly British biased.
If there's anything on the other side, that's where you tend to lie. So
but just sorry to go off topic, just because you mentioned the Olympics. I heard one of the best jokes about the Olympics the other day, which is someone said, "This is why the Irish have a sense of humor is because of the Olympics." And they were like, "What do you mean by that?" He said, "Think about who they have to come out with every time they're in the Olympics. It's Iran, Iraq, Ireland, Israel. You've got to have a sense of humor in that group." But yeah.
Oh, God.
Anyway, sorry.
I mean, do you want to explain it to people who don't understand?
Oh, it's just obviously Iran, Iraq, Muslim countries, Israel, not a Muslim country as you'd imagine, and then Ireland in the middle going, can everyone just calm down a bit here now? Making some jokes.
Yeah. Geopolitical joke.
Yeah.
The atmosphere might blow up any moment.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
Anyways, now moving on from that, teams, by the way, let's talk about them. Who are, first of all, let's start with Jason. Your top 3 teams this season. Not in terms of just the standings and everything, just how would you... Yeah.
Look, I think Red Bull have to go at the top because they had a really difficult season in terms of this. We're going to talk about something that pissed us off later. I'll talk about Verstappen fans calling the car a shitbox in that segment because that does piss me off. But look, they didn't have the best car the whole way through the season and they had some very difficult races. But you know what? Throughout it, Red Bull did kind of... They came back together, they fixed everything, they told Jos to shut the fuck up, and they sat down and kind of got on top of the balance issues. And on top of all that, they even they didn't really care about fixing Checo's side of the garage as much as I thought they would in order to get the constructors, and focused on making sure Max could, get to the end and finish in the lead. So I think everything they did, including just strategy calls, staying on top of things, overcoming the issues, Red Bull was out and out just the best team in that regard. McLaren, the question for me is, who do we leave out in the top 4? Because
top 3,
that's my point. But in the top 4, you're going to have to leave one of those out, right?
As in, who are your top 3 teams that you thought performed the best? It's not just points or standings.
I know what you mean in terms of standings, right? Well, look, Red Bull at the top then, obviously. See, I can't put Ferrari in there because they just made so many mistakes at different parts, but they came back really well.
2 consecutive races where it was Leclerc on intermediates on a dry track.
Yeah, Ferrari's not getting in there.
Just for that.
Yeah. You know what? I probably will say then, in my top 3, I'm going to. I'm going to put McLaren in there, and I'll tell you why. Right? I'll tell you why. Purely on just the fact that this is a sport about developing a car, and their car development was absolutely spectacular. If we just talk about where they started out to where they finished, absolutely spectacular. They won their first constructors title since 1998. They would have won it in 2007 if it wasn't for the $100 million fine for $90 million for being a prick. Thank you, Max Mosley.
Actually, 95 million.
95 million, sorry. For being a cunt as well, wasn't it? It wasn't a prick, sorry. Yeah, look, spectacular in terms of just pure car development. And I think if we just forget about their drivers underperforming, their strategists underperforming, their boss saying stupid things, if we forget about most of the things that McLaren did this season, an incredible show from them. Ferrari I'm not going to put in there because Ferrari should be should be where they are. Let's be honest here. They've had enough time to fix shit. They haven't. So I'm not putting them in the top 3. I want to put Mercedes in there, but I don't know. So, who do I put in the top 3? God damn, I really should start reading this list before the podcast. Let me make some more noises.
Think about it. Okay, do one thing. Hold that thought. I'll give my top 3 and enrage people a bit more.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
who are the 10 Formula 1 teams? Let me go Google it.
Grab them.
Let's start with
HRT.
Can I put Jordan?
Yeah, go for it. Oh, yeah. Okay. So first of all, I think for me, by the way, the top is going to be McLaren. Yeah. For me, the best team this season has been McLaren, in my view.
Is there something in that water in India again?
I think it's because they have orange, and that's why I like them.
Yeah, it's true.
No, I don't like orange. And it's papaya. Come on, orange is what is orange? It's probably Dutch, right?
It's
Anyways,
fruit.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I'm just referring to the color. Anyways, so why I'm putting McLaren at the top? First of all, no one expected the team to win the championship this season. I think Peter might have predicted this earlier in the preview. It was basically a passing comment, but no one expected them to win the championship. Secondly, when you talk about the team, it has quite 4 or 5 things that actually need to fall in place. First is the car. Second is the team, the basic, you can say the outfit. Third is the drivers. Now, Lando finished second in the championship, and when it needed, he was the one who was there to actually clinch the title for them. Secondly, they had two drivers who were capable of performing there and thereabouts. It's not like they were miles off each other, so you have two drivers who were decent benchmarks for each other. Most importantly, they got the job done. Unlike Red Bull, we have to talk about the team. Checo is part of the team. It's not like Checo is not part of the team. The team finished third in the championship, and it might have even finished fourth if maybe he had a few more bad races, or if Lewis performed better. So yeah, and I mean, a subtle dig at Lewis, but it's been like that. Anyways, so for me at the top, I would put McLaren, because look, this team has won the championship now. No one expected them to this season. I don't think anyone expected them to win the championship. And secondly, the year-on-year progress. Last year, last year after the first two races, McLaren was at the bottom of the championship. Within 22 months, they are at the top. That kind of turnaround is amazing. Even if we keep that aside, 2017, they were ninth in the championship. And that was on merit after the at the end of the season. Since then, in 7 years, they've turned it around and they become champions. That's a remarkable turnaround by all measures.
All right, look, we know you're in love with Zach Brown. We get it.
Yeah, I am. Look, it's Lando or Zach. Maybe someday Oscar. Anyways, that's my top team. Second, I'm going to go for a wild pick. I think Haas deserves to be there. Remember, at the start of the season, Gunther Steiner was fired and almost everyone predicted doom and gloom for Haas. And look where they are right now. I mean, except the freak result in Brazil, they would have been P6, which is, I think, their best possible finish at. Is it P5 or P6?
P6. Because Aston were 94 points, so they were relatively clear.
Haas overall, I mean, the best ever finish.
Yeah, P5 in 2018.
P5. Yeah. So yeah, I think that was the year where Force India dissolved. So yeah, still a P7 finish from being at the bottom and being an utter joke. Honestly, this team could not develop a car throughout the season. This team continued to have tire heating issues or whatever since 2017 and 2018. In 1 year, Ayo Komatsu has made such... I don't think I should put everything on him, but still there's been a remarkable turnaround. It still deserves to be there. I think it's the second best team. Again, maybe K-Mag did not do as good a job.
No.
They
weren't a good team. You shouldn't have them there. But anyway.
Yeah. In third, I'm probably not as high on Red Bull, honestly, because I think that it's shambolic that they've gone from P1 to P3, having a car that was more than half a second quicker in the first two races to finishing wherever they did. They can't be there. I'd rather put Ferrari there.
Okay.
It's a bit like, look, Mercedes. The biggest problem for Mercedes is they have no fucking clue when the car works, unless it rains or it's cold and it's basically unraceable. That's when the car comes alive. But other than that, it's pretty mid. That's where it's been. So I really can't put them there. I tend to lean with Ferrari because, honestly, Ferrari did not fuck up that upgrade in Barcelona. Leclerc might have won the championship. And that's a hot take.
Well, just to quickly finish mine, P3, I'm going to put Mercedes just against you because, yes, Mercedes is the opposite of McLaren in that they don't know how to develop a car because every single weekend they show up, the car does well or the car does poorly, and they're like, we don't know why, but fuck it, this is great. But their operations were brilliant, and they won a couple of races this year. They got on podiums this year when really they probably shouldn't have,
Four. Yeah.
And I had a quick go through the list in my head. Ferrari, like I said, I can't put on there because they had a good car for a lot of the season and they should have performed better. Aston, I don't need to explain. Alpine, I'm not explaining because just why. Haas realistically are only in that position because the other three teams behind them massively underperformed, which is why I can't put them in the top three. RB have the entire mechanical platform of Red Bull and did a shit job this year. Williams wrote off the start of the season and then crashed the whole way through the second, so they did terribly. And well, kick Sauber, I don't even need to mention. So yeah,
Kick
the
them.
only option is Mercedes. But
Yeah.
I'm sure Peter and Nedzo now are going to make us look like morons because, well, we are.
Yeah. Go for it, Peter.
It is it's a tricky one again because I think almost every team has been really bad in one way or another this year. Because McLaren, okay, yeah, they had the fastest car, and like last year, they made a significant upgrade in the car's performance because I thought that they started the season worse than they were at the end of last season, and then got the car to be even better than it was last year. But then the drivers were squandering it, and they were putting in these funny strategy calls because they, didn't really care about the drivers' fight and all of that kind of thing. Ferrari, again, it's the strategies, but also any year that Ferrari is not winning the championship is a failure because they're Ferrari, and I'm probably still stuck in the Schumacher era when I think of that's Ferrari rather than when they were dog shit in the 90s and all of that. Red Bull are going to be in the top three because again they lost the constructors because of Checo, but they sustained the championship lead. They're always really solid on strategy and development, and they just kind of knuckle down and get things done. Mercedes, again, they didn't really seem to understand the car at all. After 3 years and even abandoning the zero sidepod concept, they still don't understand the car, when before that they'd had several years in a row of making the best cars we've ever seen. And it's like, well, maybe because in the current, meta, if you will, it's less about engines and more about aero, that they're basically just power unit merchants and built this insane engine they developed for 7 years before deploying it, and the aerodynamics were, good enough, but not the best. And now that it's more dependent on aero, it just doesn't work for them. And again, the drivers were inconsistent, but, one was underperforming a lot. The other one would underperform sometimes, but was kind of there or thereabouts usually. Aston Martin were just totally invisible. I mean, there were a lot of races you just kind of didn't even know they were there, to be honest, and they didn't even have a really good start to the season like they did last year. Alpine, they had an amazing turnaround because they were really far off at the beginning of the season, and then they did start to turn things over, but then it's the way that they treated Ocon that puts me off putting in the top three because, Bruno Famin came for him, and then they got rid of him one race early. They gave fucking Sonny Hayes a bit bigger send-off than Ocon in Abu Dhabi. And then they, for some reason, Briatore's back. I don't know why. But race performances... race performance is mostly good and obviously supreme in Sao Paulo. Haas were good, so I think Haas will make top three because, getting rid of Gunter was one of the best things they've ever done. It took away all of that negative energy and all of those garbage sponsor deals that he would bring in. They finally got on top of tyre wear. K-Mag was pretty bad, but Hülkenberg was mostly good. Had some races, particularly near the end, where he was awful, but things were generally clean. Yeah, RB really, really up and down. Ricciardo was there for way too long, and they haven't. But they're in the kind of position that they've always been in as Toro Rosso, of being just kind of lower end of the midfield, kind of second or third from bottom. Williams were just, this is what the fourth or fifth season in a row they've had to just write off because it's like, oh, it'll be better next year, and then they crash all the way through it. Because even Colapinto started crashing a lot, and it's like maybe it's just the car, because Albon crashes all the time as well as Sargent, but he makes up for it by getting points. And then Sauber, if they brought that, upgrade maybe 3 races in rather than 3 races before the end, they could have been quite good because the car was getting into Q3 and getting points right at the end, and before that they were just invisible all season. So Red Bull and Haas maybe at a push Alpine because of the turnaround that they made as well.
Okay, so your top 3 is Red Bull, Haas, and Alpine.
Yeah. Every team has been really bad in one way or another this year, and so it's just another season of falling upwards.
Who's the least shit on the grid should have been the question, basically.
Yeah,
that's perfectly encapsulating what I'm about to say. I think the way to put it is choosing the best 3 teams is like choosing which lung to have the cancer in. It's not really an optimal decision.
Or which kidney do you want removed?
Yeah, it's not exactly a decision what you want to make in an optimal situation. However, you look at all of the teams; they have some reason to. We've all gone through our teams and why they don't deserve it. But you look at Red Bull, like operationally they were okay, I guess. Their human resources department was on fire after Christian Horner, and on fire after Adrian Newey left, and on fire after Jonathan Wheatley left.
Their porn filters as well.
Yeah, and Sergio Perez was too busy eating tacos to actually drive well. And then you got McLaren, who had two teenage girls in their seats, and although as we've said, they can develop a car, but they can't have drivers that you can now drive it. Ferrari, I get that operationally a disaster because they're Italian and they just busy crashing into Fiat 500s in Rome to actually do anything. Mercedes, just like probably I want to say the most consistent off track, but also the least consistent on track, which is baffling. And then if we go through all the, Alpine, definitely the most improved team of the season. I did say this. I didn't want Briatore to come in and sort that team out, but he has. He's basically come in and said, if you don't want to stop performing, I'm going to pull your fingernails out, essentially. And that's what he's going to do. And he's won at Renault, he's won at Benetton, he's won at whatever. Yeah, back since when Luciano Benetton gave him the chance in the 80s. He might be a sketchy, unsavoury
piece of shit.
Pardon?
Piece of shit.
You leave that ex-convict alone.
He might not be the nicest of people, let's say, but he's not Jimmy Savile, so that's all right.
That's a good bar. Yeah.
What a roaring endorsement.
Not Jimmy Savile.
Yeah.
Then Aston Martin, they've got a senile, still decent driver though in one seat, and a retard in the other. I can say that. It's like it's like the N-word path for disabled people. It's great. VCarb had a senile driver in one seat for most of the season, and then Tsunoda was great, but overall as a team, like you wouldn't go, wow, VCarb have had a great season. They had a chance at a win in Brazil, but then Lord Weather decided it was not a chance to have for them. For other teams, Williams, they wrote off the season to start with, and then they wrote off the season in the middle of the season by writing off all the cars. So they wrote off all the cars. Haas were very. I do like Ayo Komatsu. I think Gunther Steiner. I think we can now safely say that he's been the worst team principal in F1 for the last 10 years, since Manisha Kaltenborn was at Sauber. Because she was awful. And Gunther Steiner wasn't much better. I still don't know how. Have you seen how he's got like some tour where he's going around like the UK touring and doing like essentially like.
You tell me why the fuck are you guys giving him any bandwidth?
He was never funny.
Exactly.
Like, oh yeah, he swears in a funny accent. It's like, yeah, but he's destroying the team. Like, it's just painful to watch Haas sometimes.
One of my mates went to one of those concerts and I said, why don't you ask him why he was the worst team principal F1 for the last 10 years? And surprisingly, he didn't ask that question.
Yeah.
I would have. But yeah, and Sauber were just again, they were shit until they decided to bring an upgrade package and made Guan Yu Zhou look like a decent driver. So,
that's a task.
Yes, Zhou's not horrendous. He's not on the level of Sargent or Latifi, but he's just really quite middling. Is the problem?
He's a Ralph Furman.
Yeah, not offensively bad, but not overly good either.
Just very uninteresting.
Yeah, we love Joe on this podcast, but then we are sponsored by the Chinese Farming Agriculture Department. So
yeah. I'll get a Uyghur Muslim on here.
We can't. They're in the detention centres. They're not allowed out.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. They're not available. Yeah.
I think for best team, again, as I said, it's like is picking from a bad bunch. I don't really want to endorse one, put one team first, second, and third because that indicates they were good. Like Red Bull, I can't because they were imploding from the start of the season. McLaren were imploding at the end of the season and in the middle of the season. Yeah. And Ferrari imploded. There's no need to say at the end or at the beginning of the season. They just did. Mercedes, the most strategically thought out, but the least strategically applied. So I can't give them anything. Alpine for the recovery from being tractors at the start of the season to being arguably the fourth or fifth best team at the end of the season has to be applauded. So I'll give a top 3 spot to them. I'll think about where later. Haas, I have to put in there as well, like with Peter. And let me think of who else I can put in there. Can't be VCarb. See, Williams, James Bowles is most certainly, I'd argue, one of the most intelligent team principals on the grid. I think that he's definitely
seemingly intelligent.
Would you say?
Seemingly intelligent. We've still not seen the proof. We've seen him talk, and we've seen him talk a lot, and basically convince everyone of everything.
He's convinced me.
Well, compared to every other team principal, he at least acknowledges that the team is useless.
Yes.
Like, the others pretend it's all going great. He's like, oh, no, the car sucks. All of our engineers suck. We're using Microsoft Excel in the factory and all of that.
Yeah.
I would say if his fruits of labour come to fruition in the next 2, 3, 4 years, we can all look back and say, yeah, we were right. But I mean, Williams have had promise. Williams have even been up since their last championship in '97. They've been up at the front. It's just they haven't sustained it. That's the problem they'll have, and they're not going to sustain top level success with Albon. Or I mean, as much as I love him, Colapinto. Like at the moment, he's too crash. But I mean, you could argue
Colapinto will be a world champion, and we all know this. We all know this.
As we said, the car is temperamental, but I do believe that. Well, if it's the car and it's just that Albon and Colapinto are being made to look like prime Maldonado and Grosjean at Lotus, then that's fine, and they can sort that out. But yeah, I'd say I'd probably go. Because as I said, picking from Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren, and Mercedes, there's weaknesses with all. I'm probably going to go Alpine first because like the negatives are all right at the start of the season, and they did fire Ocon, but in the end it didn't really mean much because they still kept their position in the Constructors Championship. Haas have got to be up there because Ayuki Komatsu is amazing, and he's given the opportunity to. One of the best
as well, by the way, we've missed it. Toyota is they was actually joined hands with Toyota, so that's a big thing.
Yeah, it is a big thing. I think that obviously that was never going to make any difference this season, but in the future we might have Toyota engines coming back in the near future. Probably not.
Hopefully, it goes as well as Toyota last time.
Oh, that's not very nice.
It doesn't seem to work.
After 80 minutes in the podcast, you're saying that's not very nice after the kind of shit you said.
Yes, but the thing is, when it's against the driver that I support, that's not then it can't be allowed.
I mean, Japanese investment hasn't really worked properly that often. I find in F1, there's been a lot of failed attempts and coming and going, and the drivers have been touch and go as well.
There's probably something about the Japanese business mentality or something that I don't know about or whatever. But yeah, I'd put Haas second. Third, there's
a World War II Japanese joke in here somewhere, and I just can't find it.
I just don't really want to make it because I'm not that clued up on my Japanese World War II history.
I'm trying to connect the dots and see if I can make something work.
Yeah, if Haas were German, this would be so much easier. But,
I mean, it'd be ironic if you get car numbers that go into the hundreds. The number 731. But yeah, one of the top 4 teams has to go in that third slot. But it's like I don't want to choose any of them. I'll say Mercedes just because as a team they were good. One of their drivers could have been far better, and one of their other drivers could have been less of a Tory. But yeah,
okay.
Well,
thank you for that.
I'm just happy that somehow on an F1 podcast we have had the phrase, it's like choosing which lung you want to have cancer in.
Yeah, it's great.
All right. Enough with the teams, by the way. Let's move on. Yeah, okay, let's just touch on it a bit.
Just continue without me for just 2 seconds. I'll be right back.
Go for it.
Well, yeah, we don't miss you.
Thanks.
Say all these horrible things about him now.
I'm used to it.
Ferrari, by the way, the kind of season that they've had, the previous one, 2023, they finished third in the championship. This year, they've been second. Do you think they can fight for the title next season?
Yes.
Yeah. It's going to be a McLaren-Ferrari battle.
Do you think they can win?
Maybe. Not the constructors, because they're going to have to probably prioritize one driver at the behest of the other.
Do you think that's possible that they can do that? When you have Leclerc and Hamilton, with Hamilton.
Well, this is again, and this is something I've been contemplating ever since we got the news back in February about his decision to do that. Because even if he could, are the the capabilities in there to actually beat Leclerc, because it's Leclerc's team, and it's been his team for years now, and he understands the team and the mentality, and he has those bonds and that. And Lewis is completely new to this when he's been with Mercedes for 26 years. And again, he was prioritizing, like, improving diversity quotas and all of that in Ferrari. And it's like, yes, I'm sure that's really going to help them with the title, and they're definitely going to warm up to that, aren't they? So I think they could take the constructors drivers. It's so hard to say, to be honest, because this year, like, those 3 races that Leclerc had outside the points, those really damaged his title chances. Because without those, he would have been runner-up. He still would have lost the championship, but he would have been ahead of Lando, because he was super consistent, always top 5 elsewhere. And there were a few small mistakes from him himself, but most of the major errors were caused by the pit wall.
Yeah. Let's go for it.
What I'd say is, I don't know who's going to fight for. We obviously don't know who's going to fight for the title next year. It's going to be. I think it will be between McLaren and Ferrari again. On the Leclerc and Hamilton point, it will be difficult because Lewis has proven he can only really properly adapt to a situation where he's kind of not seen as a number 1 driver per se, because he's done decently at McLaren when Button was there. But he needs a lot of stuff to go his way, and I think, considering he's a near 40, or he will be a 40-year-old man, he will have to learn a new language. And as much as people want to make it seem the case, English is not a worldwide language, especially in Italy. I know from my brief holidays in Spain that I had to use a lot more Spanish than I thought I would have to use. And I know Spanish and Italian culture is very different. I actually argue Italian culture is a lot more homogenous. I don't think that, like, when he's talking to his engineers, he's not going to have the same bond, the same connection that they would with Charles. They're going to think, why am I not on Il Predestinato's car, the predestined one's car? Not that they'll be unprofessional, not that they'll be doing sabotage like Team LH fans claim that they're doing this year with Mercedes, but I and just Lewis in general, like, if you look at him this season, has he been up to Leclerc's performance this year? Nowhere near. Not in terms of consistency, in terms of race pace, maybe there is a bit of a more arguable thing, but in terms of a whole package, he's not been up there. I know Lewis is a mentality driver, we know this. If Ferrari have maybe not considerably the fastest car, because they won't, it'll be between them and McLaren, but if they have, like, the fastest car by 1/10 or 2/10, Lewis might pull out that extra 10% that he does have when he needs to use it in those situations. But we've seen how he does against drivers who are very good and will not back down from a challenge. Your Rosbergs, your Buttons, your Russells. He wins most of the time, but it's not all of the time. And it's, to be fair, even now, like 5 years ago, it was maybe a 50-50. It was like a 2/3 to him. Now I'd say it's a 50-50 debate as to whether he wins against a driver who's not got the same prestige as he does in terms of championships and in terms of wins. So I don't think, given the circumstances, I don't think Lewis would beat Charles at Ferrari next year. I might be wrong. And he might pull that 6 cents out, like I said. Personally, I'd say Red Bull aren't in it. Like, unless Verstappen can somehow pull off, unless they can somehow, like, be third best car, but kind of sort of there, then he might be able to pull something out of the bag, but I think it's far-fetched, especially if Perez stays in the second seat. They might even finish 4th in the constructors' standings behind Mercedes, who are going to get Russell and Antonelli. I mean, Russell, we know he's going to pull out pretty much 99% of what that car can achieve. Antonelli, he's either going to come in and do a 2007 Lewis, or he's going to come in and do a 2017 Stoffel Van Dorn. We don't know just yet. Like, I want Kimi Antonelli to do good, because I want to prove that F1 shouldn't be a closed shop. We shouldn't have what we had in 2023, where it's just the same grid, or this year at the start of the season, where it's just the same grid over and over again. People not giving chances to rookies because there's such a discrepancy between how rookies need to develop and stuff like that. I want Kimi to come in, and at least by the 5th race, people go, you know what, he's got good quality pace, he's got decent enough race pace, and by the end of the season, if the Mercedes is kind of there or thereabouts, 3rd or 4th quickest car, if he's getting consistent podiums or consistent top 5s, you can say, you know what, this kid has actually got something about him. But yeah, but just deciding those top 4 teams in terms of what next year will look like. between Mercedes and Ferrari, it's a crapshoot, and between Mercedes and Red Bull, it's a crapshoot. So, if I was to pick from those lot, I'd say I'd go. We don't know how quick they are, so I can't really say Leclerc is going to win the championship, Norris is going to win the championship, because I'm not going to make those predictions without the. At least I know preseason testing means about as much as your GCSE results, but I'm not going to make a prediction without some.
Yeah, that's fine.
knowledge.
That's fine. So the reason why I actually asked this question is, for me, the biggest problem with Ferrari continues to be one very, very simple thing. It's the temperament and the Italian culture. I think it is still there. I think Ferrari is on the verge of the kind of season that it sort of had in 2022, where at the start of the season the car was there. The problem is sustaining that kind of performance and the basic competitiveness throughout those 24 races. I think that's where Ferrari tends to struggle. Why it tends to struggle? One of the biggest reason is it's not only Fred Vasseur who's going to be leading Ferrari. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to continue shouting in his ears. There's going to be John Elkann who'll have his point of view, who'll continue shoving things in front of him, making life difficult for him. Then you have even Benedetto Vigna. He's the CEO, I think, of the Ferrari outfit. Even he has come out in the media a few times. Whenever Ferrari does well, he comes in to take the credit and everything. So when you have these kind of political things that continue to happen, it's whenever a team is run from the boardroom, it's not going to win championships in Formula One. I just think it's not possible, and I think that's where, for me, the biggest problem comes with Ferrari. Even this season, they accelerate. As soon as Leclerc won the race in Monaco, they accelerated the upgrades, and as soon as they accelerated the upgrades, the car went back. That's the kind of nonsense you can expect from them once again. That's why I continue with Ferrari. It's just like, I'll believe it when I see it, and I've just not seen it yet. I've seen the cracks still. I mean, just even the fumbles. Even if we don't talk about the fumbles in what was it? It was in Canada. Then it was in Silverstone. Just look at how they managed Vegas between Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. Imagine if it's not Carlos Sainz and it's Lewis Hamilton. That's an even bigger. Basically, it's not only a PR battle that they have to fight. It's also two big temperaments. And look, Leclerc had Sainz under his thumb throughout the season. So losing out to him in that particular race, it pissed him off, but it did not piss him off to the level that losing to Lewis will, because Leclerc knows this is legacy defining time for him, and even he would not want to lose against Lewis. So how it's going to manage two stalwarts, I think there are too many questions around Ferrari.
So what was the question?
I forgot about two as well. Halfway through, I was like, "What am I actually waffling on about? What is the point of this?"
Because I thought it was who's going to be champion, but then
the championship next season.
Right,
Who's going to fight it? Yeah.
It was so. The question was, can Ferrari fight for the championship next year? That makes more sense now. Okay. So is it me or Peter?
You.
Oh Christ. Yeah.
Good start.
Will they?
Okay.
No. Look, yes, they absolutely can, especially because it's a carryover season in terms of regulations. They did go backwards, which actually might stead them better, because they obviously went down a path that didn't work, which means they have another path closed off. I think they're at a slight disadvantage to McLaren, because McLaren, in terms of just car development, seem to actually understand the regulations now, like really, really well. And I think going through 22 and 23, where they had balance issues, meant that they got that out of the way and are now just layering kind of performance and figuring things out. Whereas Red Bull, on the other hand, are in a situation where they have to now make sure that those balance issues are gone, which could affect performance. Ferrari, I think, are in a good place in terms of just car development. However, Ferrari have to deal with a driver who is potentially washed and will cause issues, and they have to fix their strategies next year. So can they fight for a title next year? Yes. Will they? No.
Besides,
and that's Ferrari's whole history, is they have the capabilities to win everything. It's just, do they have the ability to win everything?
Yes, and in terms of winning a championship, I believe they have won championships like in what is it, like 16% of the years they've been in Formula One. So
It's very simple. It's very simple
No.
when it comes to Ferrari. 1979 till 1999, they didn't win anything. Then they had
There was a constructors, but
constructors. They win
In
1982.
83, they had
no drivers' titles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, constructors. Who cares, anyways?
McLaren,
Again, reliability decided it back then.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It was 1982 or 83.
It's free.
83, 82. They nearly won it anyway, even with 2 drivers being
They even
dead
won
or
the drive.
nearly dead. Or
Oh god.
they had like
that's-
what, they had,
Didier Pironi should have won that title. I'll say
yeah.
that.
The thing is that most of the season they had one driver, and they still nearly won both titles. Like,
Yeah.
No, they did,
unreal.
they did win the constructors in '82, I think, as well. They've got 74 points.
Oh god, they did as well. Yeah, ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's because everyone else was naturally aspirated or useless, like Renault.
Yeah, no one wanted to. It's like Formula E in 21 when Nick de Vries won it and scored like 2 points or something. Like, just no one wanted to win it.
So yeah. Anyways, coming back to the whole thing.
but Peter, will they? Can they?
In 25,
Yeah.
I think they can, but
They won't.
yeah, they won't. They can, but they won't.
Same answer. Yeah.
Probably. I think they'll be. I think they'll be second in both championships. Probably.
Who will be the second place driver, though?
Charles is
Leclerc.
beating Lewis. I know that much. I don't know by how much of a margin, but he will beat him.
Does anyone here actually think that Lewis has a chance of beating Leclerc? Just to gauge the room.
I think if Leclerc loses to Lewis next season, his
He's done.
stock falls
Yeah.
like anything, like literally
Yeah.
rock bottom.
But we're
He's
all
not
in
been-
agreement there that
I think I think Lewis has a chance if he does pull out his sixth sense that he kind of has. But I think it's 875 to 25 in Leclerc's favour in my head in terms
yeah.
of percentages of winning.
Mine
I
is
think
90-10.
if he does as well, it's going to only be on reliability.
I'm not
Again,
going by
reliability is
reliability.
gonna-
I'll
yeah.
go by my.
But I mean, in terms of the
Yeah.
points tally at the
Yeah.
end, if he has more, it's going to be because Leclerc has all the breakdowns or something like
Yeah,
that.
and Lewis fans will ignore that and conveniently go, "Oh, look at him! Fuck off."
Even though historically-
sabotaged.
Yeah,
It's because he can treat his equipment better. Fuck off! It hasn't been
even though
relevant since the 80s.
historically he's been very good at breaking some of his older cars by driving them too aggressively. But yeah.
Yeah, he'll
McLaren's-
either lose to
Yeah.
mechanical issues or obviously racism. Continue. Sorry.
Anyways, moving on. I think this is the third time we went on a Lewis Hamilton ride. Yeah.
Me?
Anyways, by the way, now let's talk about the other thing. Looking back at the season, the one moment that pissed you off the most. So, I mean, there are a lot. Just pick one. Peter.
Guess what? We're bringing this back to Lewis Hamilton.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
Okay, Silverstone. That's the only time I've not watched the end of a race. I turned it off because I was like, I can't deal with this. Like, for him to have been so down this season, and then everything just to fall into place to take his 9th win at Silverstone, and that be the race when he breaks the drought or whatever. I was like, I can't do this. And because we saw Russell have the engine failure, we saw Ferrari screw it up, we saw McLaren screw it up. Max was kind of nowhere at first, and then was chasing him down at the end. And you can see it coming, and it's like you just know his engine isn't going to blow or something like that because it never does. And it's I just didn't need that. Basically, yeah.
That's very personal of you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
Ned.
that's fair enough. Mine personally, probably recency bias because I've forgotten pretty much everything that happened in the first 2/3 of the season. Is Qatar with the fucking debris on the straight? The FIA, genuinely, I think that since Charlie Whiting died, the FIA has been replaced by a bunch of Lance Stroll clones just drooling in their seats every single time. Like I don't like Michael Massey. Like this is something I've made a point in the previous video, probably at some point in my channel. In 23 years of race direction, Charlie Whiting, from memory, you can correct me on this, had only one controversy, and that was the fact that he didn't deploy a safety car when Bianchi crashed. Or not when Bianchi crashed, when Sutil crashed, sorry. Which caused Bianchi's death. And that is
2008.
what did you say?
2008.
Would Indy 2005 count, or is that not really his
I'd say that's
his
more
control?
on the stakeholders at Bay, like Bernie Eccleston and the teams.
Yeah, that was less race.
Let's make it two.
That was
Let's be
Yeah.
Let's be harsh on him. Let's make it 2. Okay.
2000
Now let's move to Michael Massey. You've got
Mexican
Abu Dhabi
GP.
2021.
I have more.
What are you
I have
saying?
more. 2000 Mexican Grand Prix 2016. The
What
whole
was-
Lewis cut
was
the
it 20
corner. He did.
No, no.
Wasn't it the other one where Lewis just he just ran across the grass at the chicane and there was no penalty?
Yeah.
Isn't that more of a stewards though, rather than the race director?
Yeah, that's the stewards.
No,
like
I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking
Oh,
about the
Vettel.
Vettel. Yeah.
Yes.
The Vettel. Who were the other two? Ricciardo Verstappen battle. But that was
okay.
just utter
yeah.
nonsense.
Okay. Let's say at worst 3 controversies in 23 years.
Yeah.
I can.
Now let's get to Michael Massey. So Abu Dhabi 2021. How many times did he have yellow flags or not a stoppage, like not a virtual safety car or a safety car, when there was obviously a chance for it? Like for example, I think it was Jeddah 2021, where if they had to bring out a virtual safety car to clear some debris, clear the debris, then they didn't clear the debris, so they had to bring it out again. They had tractors on track multiple times. I think Turkey 2020 in qualifying a couple more times. There's at least 7 or 8 in like the 3 years he spent as race director. Niels Wittig and Eduardo Freitas, similarly, they had tractor on track at Suzuka 2022. They had several other things that I got. Because they're so plentiful nowadays that you can't remember them all. And this year,
Qatar, that was Rui Marquez, wasn't it? He was the
I
new
know.
guy, and he's it's like his second race in or whatever. And he's,
this to me makes it seem like it was a.
Is it still there or is he gone?
Pardon?
I mean, is the new FIA director? Is this there or is he?
I don't know.
The
I don't know if he's
new race
I don't know if he's
director.
interim, if they just do it. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think the FIA knows what's going on. Peter.
Well, yeah,
To be honest.
I mean, didn't Mohammed bin Salman? He just pulled a Chancellor Palpatine. He's tried to invoke executive orders that prevent people criticising him or something like that.
He
Like,
has.
I think it's a systematic problem in the FIA. Like they don't have a real leader. Ben Sulayem wants to be a leader, but no one likes him, and everyone else just isn't material for it. Charlie Whiting, I think we underestimate just how much he did, and how much of a kind of beacon he was for the sport. And I know. That what happened in Qatar, like any other, like you put any fan in charge of a race directory, they instantly put out a virtual safety car. They instantly make sure that piece of debris is taken off a circuit. You put any single person who has any knowledge of Formula One into the race directory.
The problem is it's not entirely on the FIA race director, right? The problem is that he's been put in a situation where I think there have been 2 or 3 race directors that have been replaced as soon as they make a single mistake.
This is what we talked about in that.
They're working in such a high pressure environment which has been created by MBS, not the dictator of Saudi Arabia.
He does do
The other
things
one.
exactly like the other MBS. Though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, just uncanny similarity. The problem is the kind of environment they're in. In the last 2 months, they've lost 6, I think maybe 7 now. 7 senior management people from the FIA. They've gone. That's the environment they're working in right now. So, look, if your point is the FIA in general, I agree.
Yes.
It's not the race director as such.
That's why I said it was a systematic issue, because there's clearly something wrong. If since Charlie Whiting, everyone has had multiple massive controversies, yeah.
The problem was Charlie patched the system. It wasn't that the system has been broken, I think, for a long time. I think Charlie was just a nice plaster. Yeah.
He'd been there for a very long time. He was so experienced. He just knew what to do in these situations. Because the annoying thing with Qatar is everyone.
I also remembered another one. Malaysia 1999.
Okay.
Oh, the barge boards.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
if you look at it this way, it's not correct. But if you measure it this way, then it's right. Ross Brawn was a fucking genius, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean,
The problem with this is the race director is like, I think what happened in Qatar, as you're talking about Qatar, is if you just continuously see a string of people before you getting fired for any sort of mistake, the obvious reaction then is to just not make decisions. You're not going to make better decisions because every decision is getting fired upon. So it's just like, well, I just won't make a decision and see what happens.
I personally disagree with that, because like you look at Massey wasn't fired after Turkey 2020 when there was tractors on track. He wasn't fired
MBS
after
wasn't
any of
there, right? It was John Todd.
What do you say?
It was John Todd at
MBS
that
took
point.
over in 2022.
December 17th.
January 2022.
No,
Okay,
December
okay.
17th, 2021.
Wait, was it Freitas or was it Vitic who was in for when Gasly nearly hit the tractor in
It
Japan?
was
Freitas.
Was he fired straight after?
Yes.
He stepped down straight after, yeah.
So basically
Oh,
fired.
okay. I wasn't sure about that because I still, if I was a race director, I'd put safety over everything. I know having a bit of debris on the track isn't going to kill anyone, but it fucked up the race.
It could. The thing is, you say it's not going to kill anyone, but like genuinely, it could. If someone ran over that, got an immediate puncture, and then went right into the barrier, it could happen.
It's caused big accidents in the past. I mean, the only thing with that in Qatar is that everyone watching could see how to fix this because it was like, okay, you throw a virtual safety car, and they said they were concerned about finding a gap to do it. It's like when they're going that slowly, you could find a gap. It could be something that maybe be in communication with the marshals and say, okay, after this driver has gone past, just run out immediately, and then there's a big enough gap. The other option is theoretically
just pull out the safety car, right? I mean, just bring the safety car out and
the thing is, the safety car is a bit much for just a tiny bit of debris when it can be done in like 10 seconds to grab it if you've got two marshals. The other option would have been to say, okay, it's a VSC, everyone has to go through the pit lane, and we're going to make it last for one lap so that everyone does the pit lane once, and that way it's fair. That would have been the other way to do it, but they just don't do. Everything takes forever to make decisions on. They call safety cars really late, red flags really late.
Yes.
Whenever it rains, every 10 minutes there's a 10-minute update. Like it's like they just don't. It's like just pick a choice and a decision and just go with it and just get it done quickly.
This is my point, though. Sorry, this is my point, though. Because of all of these firings and all of this backlash, there's just complete decision paralysis now. It's like we can't make a decision because we don't know what decision will annoy people the least. It's like that shouldn't be the thing. Just like you said, just pick something. But they're all so afraid of picking anything because of the backlash. It's ridiculous.
I will never forgive them for Monaco 22 when they denied us the first ever race start on all 5 tyre compounds. I can't. That's just unforgivable for me.
We need a race director or some major figure to just take the bull by the horns and say you're gonna give me flack, then I don't care. Essentially, but then
just don't be on Twitter and you won't see any of this stuff. Just don't be on social media.
Or just have the FAA back them up for a change.
Yeah,
look, he made a decision under that stressful situation.
It's all a combination of a very toxic environment where you're working, and when that's the case, you're never going to work to your full potential. That's just the whole thing.
I know that's why I stopped being a topless model at Penthouse. It's just got out of hand.
It also doesn't help that a lot of the situations, like for example this Qatar situation, it always seems to happen that the most bizarre, ambiguous, never seen before scenarios happen in Formula One on a regular basis nowadays, so that they have no precedent usually to go off. I mean, but I just make it like, for example, like nowadays you can't just like, for example, put them through the pit lane on a VSC. We've never seen that before, so you couldn't do it now. You couldn't because people would say then obviously Peter talks about letting it go through for a lap so everyone has a chance to pit. You couldn't like, for example, not just put everyone through the VSC on the pits, but also say you can't make a pit stop. But you can't I think they should make it a lot more customizable in terms of the race directors can choose. For example, pit lane is closed. The VSC is out, but you have to go for the pit lane. So giving the race directors more leeway, I think, has to be happening because having strict penalties for certain outcomes and certain incidents isn't going to work all the time.
To do what I implemented, I think they would have to say, okay, we're going to in 30 seconds we're going to deploy the VSC. Everyone has to go through the pit lane, so that if you're at the final corner, you know that when it comes, I need to go straight into the pit lane.
In fairness, Peter, as well,
it's that sort of coordination and communication.
Under the regulations, they're absolutely allowed to do that if they wanted to make that decision, because the Article 15.3 that caused the Abu Dhabi decision to be completely legal has not been removed from the regulation set. So the race director still has overriding authority to do whatever he wants with safety cars.
The whole thing. Even I think recently David Croft, I think it was on a Sky broadcast or where it was, where he said that we know what happened, we know the rules were broken. Fucking hell, there were no rules broken. There's a reason why Mercedes did not go ahead with a lawsuit. They knew they were not going to win. They are not fucking dummies. If they knew...
that safety car was out too long as well. It should have come in even earlier.
But Article 15.3 gives complete overriding authority of safety cars, virtual or regular safety car, to the race director. The race director can tell the safety car to come out on track, stop on the the pit straight and let everyone line up and just sit there for 5 minutes. And if you asked him, why are you doing that? I have complete overriding authority. He can do whatever he wants with the safety car. That is and that regulation has not been changed since 2021, which for me is the funniest thing, because the race director has been changed several times, but the rule hasn't. It's hilarious.
And you know, that's what pisses me off the most, because the problem is the media is not only it's not educated, but it has still not educated itself after what it's been 2021. It's 3 years since that happened. What the fuck are you doing? Crofty coming up on media. Look, Sky Sports basically goes out to 80% of the F1 audience, and he's sitting there and yapping that rules were broken. What the fuck are you talking about?
Education is not important in this day and age.
Maybe the media doesn't want to educate itself. It wants to push its points and what its agenda wants to be.
Confirmation bias is more important than education.
Nonsense, right?
Yeah.
Anyways,
that's not the principle of
I wonder
journalism,
how
but
many
it is the
rules were
application.
maybe broken by Hamilton's engine that he had in those last few races as well. I still don't know what was going on there.
I just think it was an engine that they knew would only need to last for 3 races, so they just turned the power up and turned the reliability down.
Most of them only lasted like 4 or 5 races anyway, because they've got 2 or 3 they can run a year. I think back then it was more than it is now, but yeah.
It was four. Was it 4 engines in 2021, or was it 3?
Something like that.
But he took an extra one, so he got the penalty, and so he didn't need to worry about any other ones.
He did. He never took a. I don't think he ever took, because Max had a grid penalty in Sochi for replacing his.
He took a penalty in Brazil. That's why he initially was going to start like P10 or whatever, and then he got the disqualification.
He got the
back.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He got disqualified from qualifying.
He had 2 penalties. He also took 1 turkey. So
what was the disqualification? Wasn't
it was for the rear wing? Was the DRS?
Yeah, that was
flap.
the rear wing. But then did they take the chance to replace the engine because of the?
Yes.
Right.
And then because of the way the sprint worked, then he was able to climb to like P14 in the sprint or P13 in the sprint.
P5, and then he got to P10.
That was it. Sorry. Yeah. And then yeah.
Because I still heard people saying that how Lewis's drive in 2021 was more impressive than Max's one this year, because he made up more positions, and it's like,
he
made up more positions in an extra third of the laps, and in the dry, and with DRS, and with an engine. Don't get me wrong, Lewis's drive in 2021 was impressive, but I'd leave it at that. I wouldn't say it was.
It was all DRS passes, like you said.
He cost himself about 75 points just from his own mistakes across the season. Like,
Imola, everyone just completely writes off. It's like if Bottas and Russell didn't crash in Imola, he was game over for him.
He's P6, not P2, and
best.
Max lost. Compared to that, Max lost almost no points from his own mistakes. He lost points from being taken out by other drivers or engine, like tires blowing up or something like that.
I'm trying to think of a mistake that in my opinion was Max's fault. I mean, I said Monza was a racing incident. Jeddah was turn one. Him forcing Lewis off was not right, but it didn't really affect it.
People still think that he should have his super license taken away because of Jeddah, because they think it's in brake testing him or whatever.
Fuck off. They never got their.
They hear the word brake test. I think that's the fucking problem. They hear the word brake test and they lose their mind. It's not brake test in the sense that he's trying to have a collision. What he was trying to do was, they were both playing this fucking game.
Yeah,
sorry, I'm going back to that point.
Look what happened 3 months later. It was DRS chicken.
Yeah, exactly.
Done well.
It's the same fucking thing.
In fairness,
there was plenty of space on either side for Lewis to go around if he was trying to give him the position back.
If you even just look at Lewis's onboard as well. Right, at the time, the excuse was Mercedes hadn't relayed in time that Verstappen was going to give the position back. But if you're looking just at like Lewis's onboard, it just looks like either he's giving the position back or he clearly has an issue, because he starts going so slowly in front. Like the closing speed is insane. And it's like Lewis just didn't want to give the position, so crashed into him instead. And it's like, what are you doing?
I think that was more of a heat of the moment thing. He thinks it's DRS chicken or something like that, but he just doesn't know what to do, so he just kind of defaults to holding on that. I will say I personally think that's a racing incident just because it was poorly communicated by the FIA.
Yeah, I agree.
Jeddah 21 is one of the most disorganised races we've ever had in terms of how that went.
Gambling on the grid positions. Do you want to trade for second place?
By the way, that was hilarious actually.
Yeah.
By the way, in all of that, Max's jump from P3 to P1, I think it was the second or third restart. That was stunning. where he
Yeah, I
overtook
mean,
both Ocon and Lewis.
he almost did one of the best pole laps ever until he hit the wall. The thing is, again, like I said, is that Jeddah is one of his worst circuits. He got pole, but considering how dominant the car was, it wasn't really by much of a good margin. And again, his pace in the race, he had Max with him the whole time. But then even after they had contact, this is another thing about Lewis, his cars never break down. They're fucking bulletproof as well.
Yeah.
Because he got damage to the wing, but the car just got even faster. And even though it was, rear wing to tyre, Max avoided a puncture, but somehow he lost more pace than Lewis
I'll
did.
never
off of
understand
that.
this thing. I mean, that was, I think he damaged his diffuser or something. That's why.
And
something
Lewis
happened
had
with
stuff
Max.
come off the front wing and it had no effect.
Yeah.
He
Because
went faster, by
again,
the way. He went faster. He did the fastest lap. He got both. And I just sat there bewildered. What the fuck was going on?
God.
But yeah. Anyways, Jason, your turn.
Well, look, there's a lot of shit that's annoyed me this season, but given we have a podcast where every week we talk about it for 2 hours, I'm going to pick something new that I haven't ranted about for several decades on this podcast, which is the Team LH version of Verstappen fans, which is the new Cult MV. They have, since the season ended, discussed that the RB20 is a shitbox designed for the garbage. And this really pisses me off because clearly it's not a shitbox. In fact, if it wasn't for Checo, it would have comfortably won the Constructors title as well. They were 70 points back. And if they had even a driver who was finishing 2 or 3 or 4 positions every race behind Verstappen, they still would have comfortably led the Constructors. 70 points in a 24 race season is practically nothing for any driver who's not having the worst drive of his career in Checo. On top of that, the argument I got back when I said this wasn't a shitbox is, well, it's because Max was out driving it every weekend. You can't outdrive a Formula One car. I cannot explain this enough. Physics work this way. The car will go as fast as the car will go. If you try and drive it past the limit, it will either collapse and crash into a wall or the tires will give out. The car can only drive as fast as the fucking car will go, right? So what a driver needs to do is extract the maximum from that. We've talked about George Russell, how he did that so well compared to Lewis. Max should be given absolute 100% maximum credit for brilliantly driving that car on the limit, extracting every bit of performance out of it from what it can do. But if the car was a shitbox, no driver can extract anything more from it. If you put Max into a Haas, he is not winning the Drivers' Championship. That is not how physics or cars work. So the car is not a shitbox. Was it the fastest car all season? No, I'm not saying that at all. However, the car was absolutely good enough if you had 2 drivers, even a driver that was closer to Max, to win the Constructors' Championship. So anyone who tells me that car is a shitbox, please go fuck yourself.
I will just add to that because I do use the word outdriving the car or the phrase outdriving the car quite a lot.
I didn't mean to have a dig there, by the way.
But no, it's all right, because I don't mean that because I did a part of a motorsport engineering degree, so I know that's literally not physically possible. I always, when I say outdriving the car, I mean the expected performance of the car.
Yeah.
So if the car is expected to finish, it's a second fastest car, it's expected to finish 3rd and 4th.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone finishes 2nd or 1st, it's a good result. That Red Bull, like, I'd put it on a. It's a bit weird to make this comparison, I'd say, but I put it on a similar level to the 2012 Ferrari, except it wasn't as bad when it fell off as the Ferrari was when it started the season and was bad. Because obviously you reverse because obviously the Ferrari was shit to start with and then got better. The Red Bull was good to start with and then got worse as it got better. Obviously the Red Bull was at times the 4th quickest car. The Ferrari was at times the 6th quickest car. And by the time like the mid-season has come around, that Ferrari was the 2nd quickest car, and Red Bull at the best in the second part of the season were 2nd quickest, and even arguably towards the end of the season, you could argue they were the fastest.
Yeah,
because there's no way that Verstappen just picked up 8 levels of performance just because he'd pretty much guaranteed the championship. So, yeah.
I think that Peter put it best at the start, which is where you said it was kind of 2nd fastest over the course of the season.
Yeah.
I would kind of agree with that. I think on average it was probably the 2nd fastest car, but they had a massive advantage of when they were the fastest car outright at the start of the season, no one else was close. which
Yes.
obviously gave them a good advantage. But it was nowhere near a shitbox, is my point.
That car at its worst was still better than last year's car at its worst in Singapore.
Yeah.
Because this time, like Max, even like Baku and Italy were the worst races on pace, but Max was nowhere near getting eliminated in Q2 or Q3 in those, and it was still like top 6.
Yeah. So look, my point is like
overblown,
Red Bull and Max both extracted the most they could from that package. That's my point. Is like if you're looking at the fact is, it's just like McLaren and Ferrari. What we're saying is they've fumbled so badly with the packages they had at points, whereas Red Bull did
McLaren cost
maximize quite a lot.
Lando, I think around 120. McLaren plus Lando, both of them totally cost Lando around 140 points. That's the number.
So
That's how many.
Quick question for you: if you put just theoretically, two Maxes in that Red Bull, are they clearing the constructors by a massive amount?
Yeah, 100%.
So there's nothing wrong with. So my point is, the car isn't a shitbox. That's all. It is.
The thing is, what we have to do is we have to keep in mind one very, very simple thing. The thing is, there was a time when Lewis had this massive fandom, and there was nothing which was a counterbalance. That's why you had always Lewis being praised. If the car is slightly bad, I mean, I remember 2017, 2018, the Mercedes was called a shitbox as well. So I've seen those times as well. The thing is, because what has happened is Max has grown in prominence, his fandom has grown in prominence, and what that does is fans are stupid. I mean, that's the basic point. Fans are basically stupid.
Subscribe.
And they're biased, and sometimes they keep their brains on one side and don't try to use it when they're making arguments about Formula One and their favorite drivers. And that's what they're doing right now, and that's what they've done throughout the season. You can't call a car that is third fastest a shitbox. On average this season, Red Bull was the second fastest car. I've done the whole thing. I'll probably share it later. It was the second fastest car. It wasn't even the third fastest car. Even then, of course, Max won the championship comfortably. Everything worked fine. You have to take things into context. You take an entire season into context. Max, except probably the race in, I think the worst case scenario was what happened in which race was the Monza. Monza was the one where he probably had the fourth fastest car, and maybe I don't know. I can't even remember in the race where you could definitively say it was the fourth fastest car. It's maybe once or twice that it happened. But the thing is, it get blown out of proportion to such an extent that everything seems bad. That was actually
like
not
over
the
a
case.
24 race season, you can't just pick two races and go, that's why. It was the same with the Piastri thing, where people would pick two races out of 24 and go, look, Piastri's better than Norris. And you're like, you can't just pick those.
I've had quite a few maniacal Aussies come into my DMs and pretty much accuse me of a lot of things for no fucking reason.
In fairness, like you said,
love your
it's just
passion. I mean, I always tell them whenever a crazy fan comes in, I said, I love your passion. Stick around. There might be time when I'll praise this guy and not praise the other guy, and then you might even be a fan of whatever I do.
And just to
that's
point out,
very
just
common.
to Verstappen fans listening, I as I repeatedly have said, Verstappen is possibly the best driver since Schumacher, and he is at very least up there in like all time in terms of just how good he is. However, let's remember this is Formula One. It is 90% the car, like always. It doesn't matter who you are.
Exactly. Now, finally, in my case, what pissed me off, by the way, you guys have actually talked about a few things that I wanted to. I think for me, it was the fucking rules of engagement that was there in Austin. I mean, that blew my lid. Because honestly, the fact that if a car is on the inside and it is ahead at the apex, it can basically drive off the other car off the track and there would be no consequences, nothing. That was preposterous for me. And I'm not sure what the new regulation and new engagement rules are because they've still not been.
They'll be publishing them in the guidelines in January of 2025. So
let's
we
see
will know
what they are, because this was fucking lunacy for me. What pissed me off the most is these have been in place since 2022, 2021, when the entire nonsense happened with Max driving dangerously or stuff like that. there have been no changes. No driver, no team has actually looked at these regulations and said, okay, there might be something wrong here.
No, just to correct, this guideline was new for this year. That particular guideline was new for this year. They removed the part where you basically had to stay on track. They basically removed that and made everything biased towards the defending driver having the advantage. That was new for this year.
Why did they do that? Okay. Anyways, so yeah, this was one thing which just, I mean, I've ranted on it for far too long because again, this makes racing impossible. You can basically what Max used to do. He would just stick his car on the inside. He would outbrake the other driver who's on the outside. Most of the time it was Lando, and that's not really racing. And again, have gravel in places. I think Austin is the perfect example they should have had. Anyways, this is one of them. The second was, I mean, a lot of people have been fired from FIA. I think one person that needs to be fired from the FIA is the fucking moron who continues to reduce the DRS zone every fucking time.
Oh my God. Yes.
I mean, this is probably the worst time in these regulations to actually follow a car and to actually have wheel-to-wheel racing. And these geniuses, what they've done is, at fucking Imola, they reduced the DRS zone. I mean, there's only one bloody area where you can actually have a remote overtake, and they reduced it. Spa, they made Spa boring. If you can make Spa boring, I mean, that's an achievement, honestly. Then what? I think Qatar, they also did that there. Why? What's the logic behind it? I mean, why are you doing that? I completely blew my mind. That's probably the biggest. I mean, yeah. Anyways.
This is a wider point I have about Formula One in general. This is also a controversial point I have. Because of modern safety rules and modern safety conditions, I think we could go back to the 1994 layout of Imola and have better racing.
Mm-hmm.
Because Senna's accident wouldn't happen nowadays. He wouldn't die from it. Or it might happen, but he wouldn't die from it. Ratzenberger's accident would have his front wing might go underneath his car, but no one would be that fucking stupid to have a concrete wall on the outside of a 300km/h corner.
Yeah.
So I believe that if you were to go to the 1994 layout of Imola, you might have to open up Tosa to make it more well for everything, because it's like a right that bends into a left. You might have to open it up a little bit, but I believe that layout of the circuit would be far better for racing, because you'd have a fat DRS.
I've not liked Imola even during the 2005-2006 battles between Michael and Alonso
because of the chicanes. I mean,
exactly.
Because of the start-finish chicane. The start-finish chicane is that was the worst thing they could ever put there.
Yeah.
Tamburello isn't needed. Villeneuve is too slow. It's like the second chicane at Monza. You can't overtake. You can overtake into there, but it's always really clumsy and awkward. They need to widen both of them.
And they ruined it with sausage curbs as well.
Yeah,
so.
I'd argue that, to be honest, I want because I've got into NASCAR a lot recently in the last year or so. We need a lot more. Like all the racetracks in Formula One are pretty. Like there's a couple that are kind of iconic, but if you look at the characteristics of them, there's a couple that have we've got a couple of loads that have loads of chicanes, and there's loads that have long sweeping bends. But in terms of uniqueness, if you were to name one unique track on the calendar, you could maybe name Monaco, and that's about it. All of them, you could pretty much, if you showed them to a non-F1 fan, and they were told to pick out the ones that look most unique, you wouldn't be able to pick any. I think that they should go, like, for example, Monza.
Really?
I think they should take out both of the first chicanes at Monza and turn it into basically a flat-out slipstream race the entire way, and that would make it far more entertaining.
I just don't get the... Like, I agree with the DRS thing, though. It just doesn't... It baffles the mind why they would do that. Like, genuine... Like, I would understand, okay, if you tried to shorten it at one point, and then you said, like, clearly, as fans looking at it, they did it once... I looked at it and was like, this is just causing DRS trains because these cars have more dirty air. They're not following. So surely the idea then straight after that is, well, let's try and lengthen the next one and see if it makes a difference. Not continue to shorten every single one.
Yeah.
And then Mexico, like, who the fuck is in charge of DRS? Because in Mexico, you have a DRS, one activation point, and then 2 DRS straights. And it never works. It's never good for racing. And they just keep it year after year.
one detection point for two zones has never worked. Like if you're
Brazil is
behind
perfect. It works. Just do the
Yeah.
same fucking thing at Mexico. It's not rocket science. Like
the whole idea of DRS just have KERS or a push to pass system. Every other series uses a push to pass system or a KERS or a boost. And
do you
it
want
works
the
perfectly.
Do you want the conspiracy theory answer, Casual, to the DRS thing? By the way,
Go for it.
because Hank pointed out, and I say conspiracy theory because it kind of is a conspiracy theory idea. But that's it. Hank, who listens to this podcast, is quite like an engineering mind and technical. His reasoning, he said, was they brought in the shortened DRS shortly after McLaren had the fastest car, so it was biasing towards a title fight. And as much as I was like conspiracy theory, my brain was also like, given how the FIA works, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, but there's one problem with that. You want to give the fastest car the best possible chance of winning the race. For that, he has to be able to overtake the cars. So
no, but his point was
McLaren is the
it was
fastest car, right?
yeah, but his point was they were hoping that the McLaren would qualify, like constantly be in front, so it's harder for Max to overtake. Didn't work though.
Well, didn't we have this controversy, particularly around Baku with McLaren and their rear wing, about the DRS getting a bit, because it doesn't fully close or something like that?
Yeah,
so they had like free DRS.
That's
all the
how the
time.
lid is supposed to be. It was like this. So
Yes.
there's a
ever
gap.
so slightly open or whatever. Yeah,
But
I'm
that
just
was brilliant, honestly.
I don't know. I just don't believe that the FIA is competent enough to come up with plans like that. Personally,
Just get bring back KERS and just make it a bit more entertaining. Like in IndyCar, they have a system where you have like 250 seconds of boost for the entire race.
That's 2026, right? That's
That's
basically the way-
2026.
Yeah. If they just do an interesting system like that, like you have 250 seconds for the entire race, you can use it in the first half, but if you get like a safety car, you're fucked. Or you can leave it all until the end.
It becomes similar to fuel management and strategy and everything, and then and the same with the tires. If you save your tires for the end, if you save your ERS for the end or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, every circuit needs to be completely revamped in terms of where they use runoff and gravel and Tech Pro, because like you said, the old Imola would be perfectly safe now if they just had Tech Pro barriers on the high-speed corners. Gravel, you couldn't put gravel because they're too fast, but you could have that abrasive runoff that Paul Ricard has.
Yes.
Because,
That's the
then
best
people
one,
aren't going to be messing... Again, that's something of track limits is also the rumble strips need to be so much smaller. Because the reason that they can break track limits so often is because the rumble strips are wider than the cars.
Yeah.
But with if you have runoff, which is both wears your tires out and slows you down, nobody's going to go anywhere near that and play these little games of trying to get track limits or anything. Yeah.
I think next year we'll probably see more of those small gravel strips that we started seeing in Austria. I imagine we'll see.
Those are genuinely one of the best developments in the last few years in terms of track limits. I don't know why they haven't.
Really clever and simple.
I think it was even Logan Sargent last year was saying something like that, but have a strip of grass or gravel, and so it's just such an obvious solution that we just. I mean, because they were coming out literally hundreds of track limits violations,
and it's also super easy for them to put in and remove for, say, MotoGP as well, which was the idea.
Yeah.
I would. Back to my point, I would just make F1 a lot more unique because, as I said, like Monza and stuff, like they're iconic, but Monza, even nowadays, Monza doesn't really produce good racing because the DRS is so futile because everyone runs wings that are literally 0.0 degrees, so the DRS does nothing.
Yeah.
And quali is a farce every year as well. But I mean, old Monza with no chicanes is interesting. I mean, I think the thing is, Curva Grande would be unbelievably fast.
It'd be like 200 miles an hour. You could do it, I think.
Yeah, you could do it, but it's like in terms of that would be even if you had Tech Pro, those would be really serious accidents if you had like a tire.
The only worry I have in terms of that layout, especially if you get rid of the Ascari chicane as well, the only worry I'd have is run off into the Les modes and then run off on the exit of Ascari. That's the only thing I'd be worried about.
The Lesmos, you would brake much sooner for those because it's much harder braking. Because Grande would be flat. Ascari would probably be flat as well. You would need you would need runoff and lots of Tech Pro, but I think it would. I can see the drivers being. Well, the thing is, tire wear in general would be very low because there's like 2 corners then or something.
Yeah.
If you do it that way.
For example, NASCAR, for example, when they go to tracks that are a bit more unique, what they do is they have one like normal tire, and they have one tire that is really fast, but it wears really quickly. So do it having systems in place where you can play, so it's not just like you have 3 tyre compounds and this one's quite quick and this one's a bit less quick and this one's, do some wild card shit.
You
because-
might need circuit
NASCAR is also facing
specific
these issues, right? I think they also brought this new generation of cars, and they're also suffering from the same thing.
Yeah.
That in terms of overtakes and stuff, there's also been some issues with that.
Yeah.
I know-
Not entirely. In NASCAR.
No.
Last
say?
two, I said in NASCAR, I think it was last year or the year before that, they introduced a new car, right?
next
something.
gen was introduced in 2022, yeah.
Yeah. So apparently that has also caused a few issues in terms of the in general overtaking and stuff. So
It
apparently,
has on certain tracks, on short tracks and road courses, it's bad.
Yeah.
But they put in stuff like, for example, literally they had what they call cheese grater tires. Like in a 500 lap race around a half-mile circuit, they were eating through 10 sets of tires because it was just cheese gratering. But it was producing fantastic racing because some people were on brand new tires and they were super fast. Some people were on really slow tires, but they were holding people up because it's such a hard track to overtake on. It produces fantastic racing when it's correctly applied. Formula One hasn't got the balls that NASCAR have, as much as NASCAR has fallen off.
We had that in 2013, and it was a dog shit season.
Yeah.
As well
Yeah.
with tires that lasted 5 laps.
Look, I just think we've already talked about how to improve racing more than the FIA has in the past 5
Yes.
years. I think that's the
I mean,
key
they're
issue
more
here.
busy. By the way, in case you guys have not seen the latest development with the FIA, so the excise and audit department that was supposed to work independently in the FIA has now a new resolution has been passed by MBS, according to which there will be one governing authority or one person will be at the top of it. It's him. It's himself.
Of course it is.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, whatever happens, unless and until the FIA president gives a go ahead, nothing can be investigated.
Of course.
So yeah, the race covered it recently. So yeah, great job. Apparently, nothing's going to happen when it comes to the FIA and everything. Yeah, they should just basically do a breakaway league. Just call it Formula something and just be done with it.
What did they call the 2009 breakaway? Grand Prix.
The
A1GP, wasn't it?
No,
That's
No.
that
was
was
the-
the country's one.
FOTA, Formula One team. No, it was the Formula One.
It was a
What
team.
Grand Prix
the-
something or other. It was a Grand Prix Championship or something like that.
Yeah, the Grand Prix Drivers
that was
Championship.
that was the
That
plan
was it. Yeah.
in 2009. Yeah, they covered it in Braun quite a bit. But yeah,
Like, what was it called? Like, for example, the American Open wheel spit killed both IndyCar and kart, and killed IndyCar when it fused back together. But I think if it was to happen in Formula One, it would kill it. It would kill its brand appeal, but it would also make the guys at the top realise that the teams and the drivers are not to be fucked with, because that's why the splits happen, because the guys at the top get too greedy, because Tony George wanted tons of the impact from the IndyCar series because he owned Indianapolis.
yeah.
Like
The
let's see.
whole "let us swear" thing that all the drivers put out is just the tip of the iceberg, I think.
Yeah. If I was George Russell leading the GDPA, I'd go up to the FIA and say, if you don't fire Mohammed Ben Sulayem within the next year, then we're going to make a breakaway series.
Well, the
None of
election's
drivers-
next year
It's like
anyway.
a
So.
vote of no confidence.
By the way, apparently
basically.
it's not. It's just not happening. Apparently, it's not a very democratic process that goes through when it comes to picking the FIA president. It's basically you, and there are 5 people that are going to work beneath you. If all those people are with you in terms of they have your agreement and everything, then you don't really need to give a fuck about anyone else. No voting, no such thing. It's basically that person and the 5% that he needs to have, which will be placed according to his whim. So yeah, that's where it basically lies. So don't be
the thing,
surprised
no-
if he's there for.
In fairness, the F1 teams would have to get fairly annoyed to get involved in it, because the last time was that 2009, and that was what caused Mosley to basically leave.
I mean, they
anyway.
got
that and a
fairly
Nazi
annoyed
orgy.
recently as well, right? They got fairly annoyed when basically he opened up the whole. What was it for Andretti?
Yeah. But
intent
look
to join
at
Formula
what
One.
they pushed back on that and showed, like, look, you can't do anything without us.
It's
So-
basically look the Formula One teams will only interfere when it affects their bottom line. Swearing and everything, all this is dog shit for them. And heck, even I think Toto Wolff came out and said that he's in favor of this. Even though he's probably the only team principal who shouts
look,
and
the
abuses
thing
on
is,
the team
it's-
radio the most.
It's just the swearing thing just is so unimportant, and everyone kind of like, if you just ask the people, like, do we want to make sure that no one swears in the press conferences? Even the drivers said, like, yeah, that's fine. Like, it was the implementation. It's everything with the FIA just seems to be the implementation. It's like the actual underlying what they're trying to do and achieve. Like, even with these regulation sets, it's like, you know, what you're trying to achieve, okay, we kind of get it, that's fine. It's the implementation is terrible. Apart from 2026, that's just pure dog shit. That would just...
Yeah.
I mean, the press conferences, they aren't even done live anymore, because, like, James Hunt used to get away with swearing as a commentator on live television and was never fired for that. Like, these days,
That
again,
was a
with the
different
radio
role, right?
messages...
I mean, he was known for doing a lot of things and getting away with it.
Yeah.
And that's his entire life, in all honesty.
But even so, like with the radio messages, they choose which ones get broadcast, and they're never broadcast live. So again, it's not an issue. Even if they have their like F1 Kids broadcast, they do now. Like...
That's what annoys me. They're trying to kidify the sport. If you'd have told the drivers 50 years ago,
They're trying to kidify the sport while making the prices so exorbitantly higher that only people who are 40 years or plus have the money to actually buy these things. It's utter nonsense the way they're actually going about it.
People are so rich.
It's not just that. It's the fact that this sport, like, I know it's not the same as it was now, but like theoretically, we could have a driver die on the circuit when we have an F1 Kids broadcast going on, and how would they react to that? Like, we can't, like, as much as we want to kidify the sport,
by the way, is the kids broadcast a different line, or how does it go? Because I've never encountered.
It's got its own
like a Red Button
commentators and
thing,
stuff,
kind of
yeah.
like.
It was done
Sky
on.
Sports
It's been done on Freeview. So I watched Hungary last year because it was on TV and it was the F1 Kids broadcast. They had, what's his name? The one that's not Alex Jakes was commentating.
Good.
Ben Edwards.
No, not Ben Edwards.
Harris,
what is his name?
Benjamin.
Harry Benjamin,
Harry
they had
Benjamin.
him commentating, and then he had two kids who were acting as pundits and commentators. To be fair, they were very good considering they were like 10, 11 years old. But then they had like Nico Rosberg came in and then shouted at a child, and then they had Danica Patrick in just bullshitting about women in Formula One or whatever. Like the thing is, they were chatting like philosophizing about Formula One whilst there were battles going on and not talking about them and stuff.
Yeah.
I just hate the kidifying of a sport where it could, like, it's not like football where, yes, you do have players collapse and stuff and that's awkward. But they're trying to kidify a sport that essentially is arguably still the most dangerous sport, maybe apart in terms of motorsport as a general rule, is the most dangerous sport in the world.
I was actually
Like, you could
about
argue,
to say
like,
most dangerous sport, at least you said motorsport, because there are so many fucking things that are much more dangerous than this. It's
yeah,
really
because
nothing.
the Alaman TT, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it didn't need to be
MotoGP alone.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh yeah. I mean, most GP you've got like 12-year-olds dying in the lower leagues and stuff. It's insane.
I
Like,
think it's
not
stopped
only that,
15-year-olds from
even
riding
at
in
the
Moto3
highest
now. I think that's for
leagues.
16.
yeah, even at the highest
but-
leagues, I don't think there's even a single rider that
I
actually
don't watch
goes through an entire season.
motorbikes, and I can still name half a dozen drivers that have died in the past like 15 years.
Yeah.
But the thing is, F1 doesn't need to be kidified because for kids to watch it, because kids have always watched F1. I mean, we all know people who remember watching when they were 5-10 years old and the cars in that era.
I literally started watching when I was 7, and that's when I got into it.
My first time seeing, like, my first recorded memory of Formula One was when I was 6, Damon Hill coming over the line.
I mean, I didn't start watching it properly until about 2007, 2008 when I was like 15, 16, but I still have memories of like the late 90s Schumacher Hakkinen and stuff like that.
The first thing I remember, I know my first race was either 2012 Britain or 2012 Belgium, but the first memory I have of Formula One was 2012 Brazil when Hulkenberg crashed into Hamilton, or crashed, I don't think it was his fault. Hulkenberg crashed into Hamilton, and my dad literally shouted at the TV, "Hulkenberg, you idiot!" That was a vivid memory for me. And
I was 20 when that race happened. I was at uni when that race happened.
Yeah, I was.
I was 7.
I was working.
Make me feel better. No, actually, I was 8.
I was working as a waitress in a cocktail bar.
Yeah. Anyways,
Waitress.
moving on.
Wearing a miniskirt.
Great detour, by the way.
Don't you want me? You know, yeah.
Don't you want me? Yeah.
Okay, coming back. By the way, so I think we've touched on a lot of things here. A lot of things. Oh my god.
We've touched a lot of people as well.
Jesus.
Good
Don't
job.
bring up the court case.
Yeah. Just by the way, what was the? Again, we've talked about one moment that pissed us off, and I think there's a lot of them. One great moment one feel good moment for the 2024
Lewis
F1
Hamilton
season.
winning the British Grand Prix.
Oh fuck no.
Lando Norris not winning the World Championship.
Oh god.
Oh.
Imagine if he does it.
Well, I mean, for me, I'm going to say Leclerc winning in Monza. I would have said Monaco where he breaks the curse, but that race was so boring, and it was just it would never end. And it was like, yeah, you've won it, but you were driving at like 10 miles an hour and no one was pitting, so does it really count? But Monza does, because he drove exceptionally. It was in front of the Tifosi, and for once they got the pit wall in order and actually pulled a strategy that worked. So that was a very good moment for Leclerc.
I'd say for me it'd probably be, because I'm a fan of him, I'd probably be Bearman in Jeddah. Because I think that driver is pretty underrated by most people. Because a lot of this is a separate point. People saying that he's 15th in F2. Why is he going up to F1? Not realizing that F2 is basically a lottery nowadays. It's fallen from its graces of the late GP2 days. I hate to be a nostalgia merchant, but GP2 is far clear of what F2 has become.
Yeah, true.
I was going to say Leclerc Monaco, but I think clearly the best moment of this season was Flavio returning to the paddock.
Yes.
Oh, fuck off.
I mean, obviously, it's just. Can I just say, Flavio returning to the paddock is by far and away the best thing to happen to our sport since option 12, option 13. Sorry,
Jesus. Yeah.
Is that because you want to keep your life and he's got a gun held to your head off screen, off camera?
no.
I mean, how is he not dead yet? Because even in the 80s, he was a
Money.
old man
So too.
when he
He's
just joined
75
Benetton.
great team.
Money,
Yeah,
Peter. It's money.
yeah.
Look at Bernie Eccleston,
Well, he-
the world's most expensive loofah, is still
Well,
walking
it's
around.
like it's like Mr. Burns. He has that series of injections to prolong death for another week, once a week. Like,
See, what's happening is all these diseases are stopping you from going through the door. So you're saying I'm invincible. No, even a small breeze could invincible.
Yeah.
Flavio has just he's dodged everything from taxes to death, and he just
Women.
continually. Yeah.
Them
Flavio is one of the great heroes of our sport, and
Someone to look
He's-
up to, someone to inspire.
He's
Yeah.
basically
Even in all that-
proved
even
that
in all those
everything
decades,
is
he's still-
possible.
think
Even
about
in
this.
all- yeah,
He was an ex-convict before he became the team principal of a world championship winning team. That
Before
is a comeback.
before he started managing Benetton, right?
yeah.
I mean, to be fair, that wasn't any big thing in the 80s because there was that guy who killed his wife that was running a team. Then
Was
there
that
was
Jean-Pierre Van Rossum?
Oh no, he was the one who burnt his Porsche in a town square in Belgium because they said we're not
who
going
was
to give
the-
engines to you.
You guys will know this. I can't remember off the top of my head, but who was the driver who missed a race because he was in a prison cell?
Bertrand
Good.
Gachot.
Oh, Bertrand
Yeah.
Gachot, he missed several.
First.
Yeah, there was that happen, and then again, the thing which maybe people don't talk about this for a reason. Again, I've talked about loads is Venturi when they sold the team to a serial killer who was shot in a standoff with the police in a hotel in Munich, and all of that.
The other driver from here people don't talk about for right reasons is Gary Brabham.
Oh yeah, him too. Yeah, there's all
Do
of
you-
that stuff. It was
Do you know what I
and
love?
Of course, Andrea Sassetti's connections to the mafia
So,
as well.
do you know what I
It's
love? Right.
Italians,
So,
really.
so I'm a like my background
You're
is
a
I'm a
Charles
yes I'm a software developer. That's my background. So I listen to some like tech and nerdy podcasts as well a lot. And in recent years, tech and nerdy podcasts have started talking about Formula One quite a lot. They're all really into it now because of all the recent coverage. And one of them recently was like, I don't know what the deal. Obviously, Americans, just like I don't know if they're going to be able to deal with this. Just they seem to be very crypto bro in Formula One, and I think it's a bad look for the sport. And I'm like, you clearly have not been watching for a long time.
Yeah.
It's like crypto is
Let's
nothing
go
compared.
Tobacco law, let's go to the round.
I mean, to
kind
be
of
fair,
money that has
we've
actually
gone
come to
from
Formula
tobacco
One.
and alcohol sponsoring to fucking crypto bullshit. So
Gambling. I hate it. It's just as bad.
At least the liveries in the smoking area were brilliant.
I mean, they were brilliant, man.
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
were destroying
yeah.
our lungs, but we were looking good while doing it.
So many perfect tens in terms of liveries compared to now when it's just bloody carbon fiber.
And fucking neon green. And who can look the most gay?
and I still love
extremely-
that Mild 7. I mean, that was
Oh.
beautiful.
Oh,
Yes.
the Mild 7
Beautiful.
is just
Yeah.
sublime. Yeah.
Fantastic.
That was just
Obviously,
wonderful.
I do love the Benson and Hedges Jordan liveries just because.
There's a shot of, I think it's early 90s, I can't remember what circuit, the first lap, all the cars are going through a chicane, and it's like some kind of rainbow snake, because every car is a different colour, and they're bright, bold colours that are easy to recognise.
And they all look different in terms of the parts that they have.
They're not all blue.
Yes, that's the thing. I remember, because as a kid, when I was very young, again, the Schumacher era, I wasn't really paying much attention, but I watched some races, and I remembered, okay, we've got the red team, the orange team, the yellow team, the grey team. They were all really, really easy to recognise.
Yeah.
And I can tell you for a fact, the advertising back then worked, because I smoked Marlboro for a long time. I have not once opened an FTX account.
Thing is, I didn't even know these were cigarettes as a kid, and even now I look at some of them like, oh, that is cigarettes, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like Camels and
It's like
all the older
777,
ones.
What's it called? Yeah.
There's so many different brands. I had no clue. I mean,
I didn't know Gold Leaf was cigarette. John Player Special. Is that cigarettes or?
John Player was massive in Ireland. I assume John. What I loved was basically Formula One in the 90s when I was a kid. It was like every weekend we would go to my grandparents' house, and my Formula One kind of first Formula One experience, is like seeing this. And I just remember constantly, I just like Formula One is linked to my dad's father, my granddad, because of just every weekend we would go there, we would watch Formula One. He would be drinking Fosters and smoking John Player. And on the telly were cars driving around fast with big Fosters and John Player signs everywhere.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, he must be a big Formula One fan then, because he smokes and drinks like they do.
That was a different world, honestly. It's just completely,
To be fair, my top 3 liveries in F1 history, they don't actually have any, I don't think any tobacco advertising. The Leighton House livery that's on the back of my phone from the late 1980s is one of them.
I mean, the 7
other
of Jordan.
What do you say?
7 of Jordan. Oh,
No,
the Jordan
one of
191.
One of my other ones is the Onyx from the late 80s, early 90s, the nice purple and green. And then the an underrated one, in my opinion, that people don't talk, because people talk about the earliest Benetton, the 86 Benetton, but for me, the 85 Tolman with all the flags on it was way better.
I really love the orange arrows, because it's just so literal, and it's like it's also because as a kid I was like, it's cool because it looks so like not what you would think a Formula One car should look, to be just bright orange, and even the wheels were orange as well. And I was like, I just love it. It's like a mobile phone on wheels. I was like, this is
So our greatest moments from this season have been the 85 Tolman.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing it back.
That's my bad. That's my. I caused this detour. My apologies. It's always my fault. In fairness,
it's the first time I've ever met you, but it's still always your fault.
you didn't need to be around long to pick up on the general theme of the show, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's just bullying, but it's good because it's character building.
It's fine. I don't think I need more character, if I'm honest.
Anyways, in my case, I think it was, I'd say the Carlos Sainz win in Melbourne. I mean, usually
it is always nice to see the number 2 driver win.
Yeah, I mean, with one less appendix. Oh no, without an appendix, by the way. With one less appendix. Yeah. I mean, he was quite emotional, and I think the whole story behind it, because he lost his seat to Lewis. Then losing a race was probably a major blow for him. Coming back and beating Charles, of all people. And the whole environment around it. And there's this clip of him, I think he was looking at his father, Carlos Sainz, at just near the podium. And it was kind of emotional. But that's probably one of the feel-good moments from the past season for me.
It's been a very good season overall.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just hope 2025, I was very, very downbeat about 2024. I'm actually excited about 2025. And I don't want to be surprised or shocked like I was in 2024, where I didn't expect much, but a lot happened. And I get to 2025 and you have just one of the team just pull off half a second or something, and you're just sitting there with just like, what the fuck is going on?
Battles in the midfield.
I mean, it could happen, but I really hope it doesn't. But talking about the 2025 season, by the way, just to cap it all up.
Yeah, wrap it
One
up
thing
with
we're
this.
looking forward to in 2025. Peter?
I suppose there's two things I'm mainly looking forward to. One of them, I think the dynamic between Lewis and Charles at Ferrari. The second one is seeing Kimi Antonelli fall flat on his arse in that Mercedes.
Okay.
I think he's going to fail because Italians, they have a way of being the goats of karting, but they're being utter dog shit when you put them anywhere near a Formula One car. And he, after his practice debut in Monza, where he crashed 2 laps in or something, quite significantly, and then Toto was defending him. It's like, oh well, at least you tried, or whatever. And it's like, it's a really weird, it's a very strange attitude to take. Is that it shows a lack of control, almost, or a lack of thinking. Maybe don't go full throttle immediately in a car you haven't driven much or anything else. But then those two seem to have a very strange relationship because there's that picture of Toto with his arm wrapped around Antonelli's waist and everything in the. I don't know.
I'm not saying I wouldn't.
But he's just Antonelli. He's too young. Like, he just turned 18 and he's skipped Formula 3. In Formula 2, he again has been kind of mid as well. I mean, the other Freca graduate to Formula 2 has been surprisingly good, considering he was basically nowhere in Freca. Dirksen, when Antonelli
there's
shat all
something
over
going on
everyone
with
in
this
Freca.
car. Honestly, there's something going on with this car.
It's going to be some illegal cartel money because he's South American or something like that. I don't know.
He's Paraguayan. I don't think they have very notable cartel.
Do they do drugs in Paraguay?
Do they do drugs in Paraguay?
Is that a thing? It seems to be more Brazil up is where the
Yeah,
drugs
but
are.
because to be fair, I've never heard of any other Paraguayan driver. I've never heard of any other Paraguayan driver ever.
Yeah, I mean, he's only Paraguayan-ish because Dirksen, famously Spanish name that.
I forgot Paraguay was a country, to be honest with you.
Are they the one where the president is a farmer or lives on a farm? Maybe that's Uruguay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Or is that Uruguay or Chile? It's Uruguay.
No, that's
right?
Uruguay. But maybe they're not into the drugs. Maybe the drugs is the Amazonian tropical ones. That
the cocaine originally is from like Bolivia, right? That's where they kind of.
Or is it Colombia?
Yeah.
No, because it was a
Bolivian.
Bolivian. It was a Bolivian that perfected it and then went to Colombia. That was the cucaracha. He went up there and
yeah.
This podcast, I love it. We're just like, right, let's get into the history of cocaine now.
Yeah. I think Antonelli, he's moved up too quickly, and again, everyone is like, oh, it's prophesized because he's amazing because he had one good race at Zandvoort in Freca last year or whatever. That he's like, I don't know. It's not. I don't think it's going to work, especially not against George.
Yeah, I mean, my hope would be, because obviously I'm a fan of him, would be to see how Oliver Bearman does. If I want to see him beat Ocon, because it'll be very funny, and it'd also prove what I've been saying all this time. It'd mean that when I eventually sell all the merchandise I have of him, it will be worth a lot more if he becomes a 7-time champion.
You'll need to keep the merchandise for that long as well. So, Jason.
Well, look, I'm hoping we get a 4-way kind of team title fight. That would be amazing. And we should do, because of the carryover, but I just, like you, I've got this worrying feeling that our expectations have now been set really high and we're going to have them kind of pulled from under us next year. So I'm just hoping that the Alpine sale completes. I think that's going to be the main thing. They're going to be sold to high tech. It's just going to happen. And that will mean that my favorite driver, Nikita Mazepin, will be back on the grid for 2026. That's the key. Yeah. I don't know. I've nothing to say about 2025 because everything we've said, we've already kind of said it.
Be a Russian driver and drive in Formula One. Be a Daniel Kvyat. Be Sergei Sorokin. Be anyone, but Nikita Mazepin was the worst of that crop, honestly.
He did actually retire from racing a couple of months ago after he got taken off the EU sanctions list.
No.
Mazepin.
Well, so I mean, if Alonso can come out of retirement, surely Mazepin can.
I think if he knew there was a chance at F1, he probably might come out of this again. But
it's not going to happen. But it does seem like the team will be sold to high tech. If I'm honest, if I had to just nail it down to the one thing I'm excited for, I'm not getting excited for a title fight because that is just so dependent on car development over the off season. What I'm actually most excited for next season is just the absolute meltdown of Team LH. I'm so looking forward to seeing them on track fighting each other because I know how it's going to go. If Leclerc's winning, it's sabotage and it's Ferrari working against him. And if Hamilton's winning, it's because Hamilton is clearly the best driver of all time and Leclerc just isn't as good. And it's just going to be so fun to watch Twitter next year because no matter who wins, Twitter loses.
That's a good quote.
Yeah. I'm actually hoping I think the Red Bull Max dynamics is something I'm quite keen on. If the car is not there, I don't think Max sticks around for 2026. I'm pretty sure of that.
Interesting.
It's his
Well, in
first
F1
year
or
without
F1?
Adrian Newey machinery.
In F1 as well. I think he'll take
you
take
think
a
he
year
goes
off
Yeah.
because I think he'll be a father by then and he'll probably spend a year.
He
and
keeps hinting. I mean, he said he's not going to be here come 2030, and maybe he will, because he's never necessarily expressed aspirations of taking 8 titles and breaking every record. And he's been doing this, since he was 5 years old, basically, largely against his will. And he doesn't do anything else. So he doesn't even get the freedom to, because his contract lists a whole lot of things he's not allowed to do if there's risk of injury.
Yeah.
Whereas Hamilton, in his Mercedes contract, has always had a huge amount of freedom in terms of what he can do outside the track. And as we saw in 2020, he clearly he had the team wrapped around his finger, and they would kind of submit to his every demand and everything.
Yeah.
The other thing that we could see
You're
about
talking about the
Verstappen,
black livery, right?
That and the whole general BLM thing, but the black thing, the silver arrows has turned black overnight for him. But then also the F1 in general, that he got everyone to do the knee taking and everything else that went along with that.
I assume the Mercedes next year will be back to full silver arrows.
Oh, absolutely. It'll be back to silver, with him gone.
Well, one thing I will think is interesting about Verstappen is if he doesn't, or if he does leave F1, I want to see him try the Triple Crown. I want to see him, first of all, do Le Mans because that'll be the easier one.
There's
I know
literally no chance.
He'll definitely do Le Mans, but Indy, I don't think so. I could see him doing. I could see him doing Le Mans. Maybe him and Jos would do it together in like an LMP2 or something. Or Alonso, something of that nature. Indy, it's hard to say.
The problem with Indy the problem is, I mean, even I can understand. They're doing 370, 380, and they do it regularly, and you have to. The thing is, you have to. Alonso did well.
He would kill himself with his racecraft. I think he would. He cause a massive accident.
There are more dangerous drivers in IndyCar than Max Verstappen. I can tell you that for sure.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It's not, as Alonso showed, it's not something you could jump into and expect to be competitive when you've never done IndyCar before.
Yeah, I mean,
Alonso could have won in his first
Indy
appearance, by the way. He could have won. It was P5 and then Honda did Honda things.
Yeah.
But I don't think the thing is, I don't know why people say the speed is very high and it's quite dangerous, but no driver has died at the Indy 500 in like 25 years. And that was only in qualifying. I think the last driver to die actually in the Indy 500 is at least 30 or 40 years ago.
Yeah,
I don't see why.
That's there, but it's something that's become a very common theme. Hulkenberg declined IndyCar primarily because of this. Yeah, he didn't want to race in the ovals because he had apparently he had offer from Andretti and he said no.
It's just we saw what happened to Robert Wickens, and we had Justin Wilson and Dan Weldon die not that long ago as well, and I can see why
Dan Weldon as well.
Yeah, I can see why they look at this and think, no, this is a death trap.
The reason why Dan Weldon died was just because of stupid. Like you talk about like corporate or fuckery and all that sort of FIA bollocks. Literally, what they did was they went. They took the cars to Las Vegas for like this £5 million or $5 million like shootout. They said to any driver that was like they've tried to get Kimi Räikkönen on board. They tried to get several other kind of big names on board, and they said if you go from last place to first in this race, we'll give you $5 million. Dan Weldon takes up the offer, and they go to Las Vegas, which is like, don't get me wrong, it's an oval, but it's a very tight oval, and it's a cookie cutter they call it, and it's quite small. And they put 34 cars on. Then they put a package on that makes you do 235 miles an hour. Then they put a package on that also makes you race about 2 inches away from the car next to you. It's always going to happen that someone's going to have a massive crash and die because they realise that pack racing doesn't work in IndyCar like it does in NASCAR because there's a chance you can lose your head.
Yeah. True.
And on that death bombshell.
Yeah, by the way, I don't think... I think Max might leave for a year, but he'll come back. And in 2013, he'll probably be there. It's just... The thing is, first of all, the money is too good. And secondly, every driver, if they are in their prime and they're good enough, they leave Formula One, but they realize that there's actually nothing better. There's a reason why Formula One is the pinnacle of motorsport, because there's
It's
no
not.
car that's as good as this, and it's never going to get better than this. That's why they all come back. Alonso came back, Kimi, and plenty of others.
Michael, yeah. I mean,
Michael.
2030, he'll still only be in his early 30s as well.
Yeah.
He could go until 2040 if he wanted to, probably.
Are you excited for the Max Verstappen, his washed arc when he's kind of racing at 39?
But I don't think he'll have that.
No.
Schumacher never did.
He'll
Prost
be
never did.
battling.
Senna never
He'll
did.
be battling against whom? Robin Raikkonen.
Antonelli.
Antonelli.
Yeah, Robin Raikkonen's going to be in there. Maybe he'll be battling his own son. I don't know. Or if this
Yeah.
Yeah.
we got this
Anyhow.
new one coming up. Yeah.
So yeah, on that
Verstappen,
bombshell.
PK.
Yeah, on that bombshell, it's time to call it a day.
Yeah.
We probably. I think we overshot the time. I think we expected that when Peter with Peter being here.
Yeah.
He just
I mean,
blames Peter, just like it's Peter's fault.
We've gone over by 45 minutes, but it hasn't interrupted anything. So.
It's on you, man. I mean,
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe.
thanks, guys. Thanks, Owen.
Yeah.
Owen, what? I'm going to. When will I get it right? Tell me,
Owen.
what's your name? Sorry, what?
My name, Owen.
Owen. Okay.
Owen. Yeah.
We'll-
not
we'll,
Oven.
I'm not used to people calling me online by my first name. I'm used to people calling me Nedzo.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. I'm going to stop
Thanks, Peter.
recording
Thanks,
now.
Owen.
I'll put links to the guys in the description below.
Yeah.